We are live. Hello and welcome to PJ Maybe and Season 8 Red Dwarf with my guests Catology and Darren Who.
Hey.
Hi guys. So, what shall we say? A struggle?
Meh. A bit meh.
Diminishing returns, shall we say?
Yes, definitely. I think because they changed the format, it didn't help it as well. They obviously changed the format for, I suppose, obvious reasons, because they were looking at a movie after this season.
It seemed pretty obvious that the way they finished it as well, that they were assuming there was going to be more.
Yeah, they assumed there was going to be more, and considering this was the 10-year hiatus before Back to Earth, they had planned for a movie, which never came up. And I think they put in a lot of bits in here that some worked, some didn't, that they were aiming to go for the movie. But did you notice in this one, the whole season, it was almost like an Easter egg hunt? There was a lot of references back to previous episodes.
Yes, spotted a few of those.
I spotted them quite a few going through. And hi, Sadako. There's, we've got someone in the chat. Yay! We're not alone. So, will we start with the back in the red, a three-parter, but we'll deal it all as one. So, anybody want to kick off what they thought of it in general for a three-parter introduction?
Best thing I can say about this one. All right, dudes.
Yes.
It was okay, but
it was. I think out of the last few years, especially, it's not a strong one. It's one of the weakest opening episodes, although it was a three-parter, but I think it's been one of their weakest opening ones. Because you look back, you had Hollow Ship, you had, I was going to say Cassandra, but I meant Camille.
Yeah.
Was it Camille?
Camille, yeah.
Yeah. So they were strong openers, whereas this one I felt was quite weak. And it was initially meant to be a 1 hour special.
But
they went a wee bit too much and they didn't want to cut it down. So what they did was they added to it to make it a 3-part. So
it was a bit too stretched out.
I think it was a wee bit stretched out too much, and I think it's because they might have been an hour and like 10 minutes for all we know. But I know it was a wee bit. It was over the 10 hours, and they didn't want to cut it down. Sorry, the hour, 10 hours. They just felt like 10 hours when I was watching it, I suppose. Basically, it was the hour and maybe an hour and 10 minutes, and instead of cutting the 10 minutes down to make it an hour or an hour or 2 half-hour ones, they seemed to they felt as if they couldn't cut it, so they extended it. And I thought, oh dear.
Yeah, that was a bit of an error, I think.
It was definitely.
Sort of dragged too long.
Did they have more of an eye on just sort of, churning out extra episodes to fill the overseas sales and
yes, and
syndication and all that sort of thing?
And it shows that's what they were aiming for, because it was actually released in the US before it was released and broadcast in the UK. It was released in, what's the channel? Is it PBS? Their public one. It was broadcast in the US before the UK. I think it was on PBS. It was a month or two before, or was it a month? So
I didn't see it, but I can remember it. I remember PBS.
I think it was actually broadcast about 2-3 months before it was broadcast in the UK. So the US had already had every episode before it was broadcast at all in the UK. So They
I
were
never knew
obviously
that
gearing
before.
for the US market.
Yeah.
And I think that's why some of the changes were made. And I think some of the changes failed it. There were some good things about it. You know what I mean? Like the reintroduction of a few of the crew, like Mac McDonald.
Good to see some old faces back.
Yes. And it's just, unfortunately, you only saw Chen and Selby. You didn't see Peterson.
No. I was expecting him to turn up.
They asked him, but he couldn't because he was filming the Fast Show. Was it the Fast Show? It definitely was the Father Brown.
Yes, the fast show was on.
He was doing the Fast Show about the same time because I keep going to think it was Father Brown, but Father Brown was a lot later. But
That's
yeah, he was doing the Fast Show, so he couldn't. And you think, considering the Fast Show, you think he would have been able to even come in for, because the Chen and Selby were only in for what, a minute or two on screen. So even they could come in just for a wee bit. You thought he would have come in. But I think the way they started it didn't help either, with Lister being an absolute pain. Because
Lister seemed off to me. He definitely didn't seem quite on character to me.
No, I know. Just constantly try to get Rimmer to speak, and Rimmer just sitting there, and he's just going on and on and on and on. And I thought it went a wee bit too much.
A bit too long. Yeah.
But saying that, I can imagine two people actually, if they'd been in prison for ages, doing that, not in effectively their first or second day in. I think it's meant to be their second day in prison when the two of them are there.
Yeah. Didn't quite fit that.
Yeah.
It just seemed went in straight away in it. Like, maybe because he mentions that what he did, he poured it over, and it was the day before. You poured it all over me, and then obviously you go back and see it. So this is meant to be the next day after he got whatever poured off over him, and that's why he's not speaking to him, and that's why he's constantly trying to get him to speak.
Yeah,
and stuff like that. It just seemed grindy. But as an introduction episode, I think if it wasn't the intro episode, it may have not been as bad. But because that's how they started the series.
Yeah, it didn't seem like an ideal starter episode for the beginning of the series.
Yeah. And I think some of the CGI they used as well, I thought didn't work.
No.
And some of the CGI they would have been better not using as well.
It just didn't look very good. I mean, compared to the original model work for the ship.
Yeah.
It just looked very sort of, I know it was 20 or 22 years ago, but it seemed like a regression.
It did, because the model work was always far superior to the CGI. The CGI Red Dwarf just didn't look right. And yes, it was meant to be an improved version, but it just looked worse than the model work.
Yeah.
So when you're going down Red Dwarf, go down the model, you can see it. But when they're doing it with the CGI, it just looked weird.
Yeah, it didn't have that classic Red Dwarf feel. There was just definitely something off.
Yeah, it just looked a bit cartoonish almost. It didn't fit.
Uh-huh.
This was I suppose it was part of the time, CGI was becoming
coming at it was
the films, and television was trying to catch up and not being quite there yet.
Yeah. And some of the things they wanted to do that they couldn't do, but because they couldn't do it, they didn't address it, I thought was weird as well. Like, obviously Peterson couldn't turn up because he had a filming commitment, and Claire Grogan didn't want to do it, and accordingly they were wanting to have Claire there so they could have the two Kachanskis, because Kachansky was the alternate version.
Right.
However, considering everybody was resurrected and there was no Kachansky, yet that Kachansky was meant to be their Kachansky. they didn't address it.
Mm.
And I found that weird because everybody's been resurrected. I thought at the time, didn't obviously know Claire Grogan had said no. I was expecting to see the original Kachansky.
Unless
And
there
then-
There could have been
would
some
have at
good.
least thought about it.
Oh, they did. They wanted her. I know now they had wanted her to come back, and she said no.
Ah,
And they
Oh,
had to
they
rewrite it because Peterson and Kachansky weren't actually in it. So they had to rewrite what they had initially planned. But at the time, obviously, when I first saw it, I was a bit disappointed. And then the fact that they didn't even mention it.
a little
thought-
too convenient.
Yeah, it was almost like, well, they're implying it's the exact same person. So it didn't work in that respect.
So
And
yeah,
where's all the cats? Because
yeah,
we know at least one cat survived after the radiation and he had died, but we don't know what happened to the body. So we assume what his body's still there.
Yes.
So why didn't the nanobots resurrect him as well?
so a bit sloppily done, really.
Yeah, and I think that's where the problem was. It was just a case of they had the idea of what they want to do, but they skipped round bits and pieces.
Mm.
It could have been something like, for instance, in Pete, it could have been the cat priest.
Yeah,
that would have made sense.
Anyway. He would have been but then again, obviously, with the actor who had played the cat priest, you're talking about what was the difference between the first episode and that one? 8 years? No, it was actually 10, 12 years.
About 11 years, 88
Aye.
to 99.
So, and he was, I wouldn't say elderly, but he was old. Because he was the guy who was originally in the Patrick Troughton War Games. So he was.
Oh, that's right. I knew he was familiar from somewhere.
Aye, so he was the general, the alien general from War Games, and
That's right.
uh-huh.
Thank you. You know, I knew something about it. It's like, you know, sometimes you see someone, you think, oh, they're familiar. Where have I seen them?
Well, War Games is my favourite classic. I must admit, it's definitely my go-to anytime I want to watch a wee bit of Doctor Who. If I've got the time, I'll dig out Patrick Troughton's War Games. If I'm not, I'll dig out a random one.
I spotted another Doctor Who connection in a later episode as well, but
you need
more on that when we get there.
Definitely. They also they didn't want back in the Red as the initial title. Their initial title for it was just called Resurrection, but then the same again, they decided that was a wee bit
obvious.
So they decided to go
bland.
with Back in the Red, and I think Back in the Red is a better title than Resurrection. I must admit,
Yeah, definitely.
because it's a more Red Dwarf title. It's not your standard.
Yeah.
Oh, it explains exactly what's on the tin type one.
Yeah.
So
I think with all of the nitpicks, there's some, as usual, some great lines.
Oh,
but I think a lot of those bright moments are thanks to obviously the writing, but also the actors, the crew, you know, carry them off with such effortlessness that you just, you know, no matter how poor the overall series might feel overall, there's still some really, really funny lines.
Oh yeah, definitely. You look at Cat. Red alert. Why don't we just go to brown alert? There's no such thing as brown alert, sir. Are you sure?
You won't be saying that in a minute.
You know what I mean? Typical Red Dwarf lines in there. But
that was one I loved. That one really made me laugh.
It did. It definitely made me. But there was other ones that didn't quite work. Like, for instance, when they first bumped into Chen and Selby, the bits you're sitting there, it says, "Is it really you?" And he went, "That's really me." And I thought, really? You would have expected some stupid comeback between a group of friends, drinking buddies, rather than going, "Yes, it's really us." it just seemed a wee bit bland as a joke amongst good drinking pals. Along the lines of, can you not recognise you pissed again? Or something along those lines. Would have been a bit funnier.
Kind of a letdown, really.
They're always drinking together. They're always messing around. Yeah, he just gives it the touch himself. It's really is type thing.
Sadako has said in the chat, Back in the Red seems a play on Back from the Dead.
Oh, I never thought
it was considered for the follow-up to Series 6.
See, I would never have thought the Back in the Red. I literally took it for back in, as in Red Dwarf, but yeah, it probably is because they did that with quite a lot. Ticket to Ride, Gunman of the Apocalypse. They did a lot of play on certain things, and that's actually Back from the Dead is probably the right one. But I would have never put those two together. Considering the way Red Dwarf has done a lot of stuff like that, I would never have even twigged they were playing on words or a movie or something like that. But there you go.
Yeah. Was there a bit of a budget cut to this series as well? Because
I don't think so.
Had a slightly more polished cinematic look, and this one it seemed to be back at the more sort of basic.
They ran out of funds at the end because I know what they had planned. However, I don't think they had a budget cut. I think they used it on Pete, the animation for Pete and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So they said they used a lot of their budget on the CGI on a lot of the stuff, and they ran out at the end because what they wanted to do rather than the Only the Good. Because they had planned to be back to Earth. It was literally going to be called Earth.
Yeah. It seemed like it was just sort of stopped. It just stopped. And it seemed like there should have been a little bit more, even though it was sort of meant to be a bit of a cliffhanger going into what they thought was going to be the next chapter.
Yes.
It definitely seemed a bit disjointed, that one.
Well, they had plans for that as well. That didn't come to fruition because we were not only getting the Dibblies back this season, we were going to get Ace. But they decided to cut it because Ace was accordingly meant to have come in and saved Rimmer. Because
wasn't Rimmer Ace?
Yes, but remember that was the hard-light hologram Rimmer.
Oh, and this is Rimmer.
Living Rimmer. Yeah. So he was going to come in and save the living Rimmer.
That would have been cool.
But for some reason they dropped that. And they were also going to kill off Rimmer. And they thought that was too sad, so they dropped that as well.
I'm glad they dropped that.
Back as a hologram.
There was something we saw when we were watching it on BritBox earlier. There was like a little thumbnail for season 8, and the thumbnail image does not appear anywhere in season 8, whereas the previous thumbnails on BritBox seem to relate to one or the other episode from that series. And the thumbnail is a picture of, it's an image of Lister, but like an alternative Lister, like he's got like a handlebar mustache. He looks like a version of like a posh Lister, which would make sense if he was from the parallel universe.
Oh, see, I noticed that with the mirror universe.
Where was that scene? We didn't see it.
That was very noticeable because Kachansky was there and the cat was there. That was it. The only two you saw was Kachansky and the cat. You didn't see, and obviously Rimmer had gone through, but you didn't see his alternate because he was the captain. So where was the captain? So even if he'd swapped with his alternate when he stepped into the mirror, the two of them stepped through to the other side. Where was Lister? He didn't see him, and that's probably the bit they've cut.
Yeah, they must have used the thumbnail from the bit that actually got cut because we were talking, going, we didn't see that bit. We've watched the episode twice now.
Yeah,
I'll see if I can find it and do a screen grab.
See, I didn't obviously see that part of it, but I knew there was there just wasn't, because they did it with the one with Ace initially. Remember where he came in? It basically starts off. You see the cat, Holly, Rimmer, Crichton, all the cast as an alternate. Yet in that one, you only saw Kachansky and the cat.
That's why it felt a bit disjointed to me. It was just like something's
almost the stuff they normally do, they ignored for some reason. Yeah, I mean, so there was some parts within this first 3 episodes I thought worked well. Some I thought made zero sense. Like, for instance, the ones that worked well were the Brown Alert.
Yeah.
That section about them crashing and the saying, the world loves a bastard. Yeah, you just imagine them going, you drink, just to walk down the corridor. Hello, ladies.
That was funny. That whole thing with Rimmer at the captain's table, where every time he went to get up, one of the other women would be chasing after him.
Yeah,
that was really funny.
That was funny, and see, I think that worked. And come back. Oh, there's no more coffee. I forgot the coffee. I need to go. I've had too much coffee. I couldn't have mints until tomorrow.
Yeah, the sort of gag was just so funny, and it was well done. You know, it
also unfortunately put something in later on out of sync, as it were. Because you look at the viruses, they've always drank them. So they have. So it wasn't like the luck virus. Later on, you've got Lister. You go to get the luck virus.
Yeah.
And then later on, he says about it being cured. And obviously, and then he mentions it still working. Makes zero sense as well. But at the very end of it reverts back to the very beginning. You poured it over me. So pouring it over him works, whereas drinking doesn't, because it made zero sense. Because you remember in the lift with Kachansky, she says, "Lucky you've not got any of that sexual magnetism virus." And he went with the other one, and then she suddenly comes on to him and jumps on his bones. And then she says, "I'm really sorry." And he says, I had the sexual magnetism in one hand, but the luck cured it. So the fact that he'd had to lick his fingers for it to activate, as it were. Yet at the end, he pours it on Rimmer's shoulder when he's in the prison. So how does it work? So he had it in his finger then. So why did it not attract her until he licked it? Yeah,
they played a bit fast and loose with that.
And I think it's because they did. The fact is, see, if they hadn't, it's just a case of he's touched it and he's got the luck. But the fact that he had to lick it, especially when he was in the lift and he had to actually imply that she'd asked about it, then he licked it, then she got turned on.
Yeah.
Whereas if she had actually started, and then he would have thought, oh, I must have had that in my finger. It takes a wee while to come through. It's the same as anything. Yes, if you've got a bug and you go in your mouth, you'll catch it quicker. But if you left it in your hand, it might absorb through your skin. It would have been better if it was something like that had been mentioned about it. Then it could imply that pouring it over your clothes for some reason.
Yeah, I think it's a symptom of a lot of the points about this final season was that it felt rushed. It felt a little bit alien, in terms of really what we've come to expect.
Yeah, and I think they had good ideas, but it was the execution of them.
Yes,
that failed on it. And
but on the positive side, Chris Barry was back and he was on good form.
Yes,
and Norman Lovett. I mean, the scene where Rimmer's giving the report to the captain and he's doing his salute. That was quite fun to me.
I thought that was funny initially. and then it just kept going and kept going and kept going.
Yeah,
And when he actually finished, he was doing it backwards. And I'm sitting there thinking, why would he do it backwards? Because he was always trying to get the salute. So yes, all he's done is extended it. But starting to do it backwards, to me, made no sense. Because you'd never seen that up until this point. And I thought the fact where he kept doing it and he was doing it longer and longer and longer, I think it's the same idea. It got to the point, and then this, instead of stopping it, you just let it go on. And that's when I thought it was funny, and then it dropped off and he was still doing it. And that's the points that I thought they seemed to extend things just that wee bit too much. So they extended it.
Doing the joke.
Yes, they extended it, which was funny, but then they just kept going when the humour sort of, really? He's still doing it? And that's the parts that I thought, they've got the idea to show he's extending it just because he's extra special. But it kept going and then giving it all this, he's handing down, and then doing it in reverse when he was leaving. I thought, like at the end when they were getting marched, they basically, all he did was 1, 2, 3, 4, and then so it basically back to his normal. It just, there was a big disconnect to the way they were doing it. So the idea that he was trying to ingratiate himself by doing it a bit longer, but just kept going and going.
It went, they pushed it a bit too far.
That's the only way I thought. So the initial part of it, I was not myself. And then I found that I was stopped laughing and he was still going. And I thought, that didn't work. If you stop laughing before the joke has finished, there's something not quite right there. So the joke is hilarious, and then you stop laughing, but the joke's still going. It tells me it's going a wee bit too far.
Sadako's put a good comment up, and he said, my feeling was that it was a season of all gimmicks, but no soul.
See, that's what I thought. Remember, I said that about, I thought it had actually, there was a lot of Easter eggs, so they kept referring back to it. And I think you're right there, Sadako. It's basically, it's a lot of old gimmicks that they're just sort of reused. And I think it's the same idea. You look at the US pilot. Remember I had said about the US pilot where they introduced the cat, and everything the cat did in the first season, they put into the first minute or two you met the cat. Everything. And it was just odd jack crammed in there. And I think they've done the same idea because they want to get the idea of a movie syndication in America, because the US pilot didn't work. They wanted to think. And I think that's what they did. They took all the things and then they put what they classed as the best gags and reused them, or used a variation on them, because this would have probably been, because it was shown in the US first rather than over here. I would assume that's because that was probably the first thing most US audience would have seen was season 8. So it was the introduction. Be like watching Christopher Eccleston and then going back to watch the classics.
Yeah.
To me, they're completely different. Christopher Eccleston was good for the time. Well, to me, classics were always better, but I can understand why so many people got into it from Christopher Eccleston, because it was a fresh take on it. And then you go back and then you watch the classics and go, oh, there's a lot more to this. And I think that's what they did with this. And I think Sadako's right. It just felt like it was a lot of old gimmicks just reused or referred back to. So it is, which is unfortunate, because with so many good bits, like the Dennis the Donut Boy gag, that was a new gag.
There's a great, go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. It's just,
I was going to say, speaking of gags, there was a great one in part 3 of Black and the Red. And it was one of those punch the air moments that just works. And it was ground control to Major Tom.
I liked that part. I must admit,
it was sort of like, oh,
do you hear me?
I'll get me coat, but it was still funny.
It made us laugh.
But it was when he leans over and says, "Major Tom."
And the whole dance sequence.
I like that. But it's the same idea as well. The blew part of their budget on getting the blue midget to dance in the dance sequence. And I thought, initially that's funny. But was it really necessary?
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, so I can understand why he's saying how he can make these things dance, and then he starts dancing with it, and it's I can see the humor in that. But I was sitting there thinking, if they were running out of budget to do something they wanted to finish, then that could have been cut away down.
Yeah.
Because having the other three in the background dancing away and stuff like that, you're sitting there thinking, it's just they used too much for it. They went, I suppose, a wee bit too far on that sight gag. And I think it was the same idea. They just dragged it out a wee bit too long because it was a good initial funny gag, but and see Danny dancing, can't deny that.
Any chance to see Danny dancing, just.
But I just thought it went a wee bit too long for.
Yeah, it did. It would have been funny for a couple of seconds, but it was like, really?
Uh-huh.
How much longer is this going to go on for? Yeah.
I suppose they were still in the artificial reality at the time,
yes.
weren't they?
Mm.
Yeah, and that's another thing. How did Crane get into artificial reality? Because they got him to lick the envelope. The psychedelic drugs?
Psychotropic, yeah.
Psychotropic drugs. So a robot can lick it and absorb the drugs the same as a human. You see what I mean? It just seemed a wee bit weird.
It was all weird. It's definitely just...
Well, as Crichton says, if it wasn't for Mr. Lister, sir, I would be normal. See, I like the scenes with the counsellor or the what is it, emotional counsellor, whatever he was.
Oh God!
But the bit where he kept saying, "Is your chair bolted down?" And I'm thinking,
it was like enough. Yeah,
chair's bolted down, but he's not strapped to the chair, so does it matter?
Yeah. It was a bit odd that
is that chair bolted down and he's leaning down going, it's secure. So his hands are there. So he's not strapped to it. It's not like you see the convicts in America with the big table with the hook and they're handcuffed on it so they can't do anything. He's just sitting there and they kept asking if his chair was bolted down. And I'm saying that's implying he's attached to it.
Yeah.
But
yeah, that was a very strange exchange, that was.
So that's the only thing I thought was it went a wee bit too much with that again. It's the same idea, asking the same question. I thought, unfortunately, him doing the drugs and that bit with the Crichton was just a wee bit weird. And do you know fine well who they were wanting to get back to do the Crichton voice for when he was Factory Reset?
Yeah.
Yeah, they wanted David Ross back.
Yeah.
But accordingly, I don't know if it was a case of he couldn't do it or they decided that Robert Llewellyn could do a passable imitation. Nope. Definitely wasn't a passable imitation of David Ross. I think it would have been better with David Ross's voice there.
Yeah, always, I think. Yeah, I think it always would be.
Aye. Robert could do a decent pompous voice. And it was almost very good, sir. And it was almost like that type of thing. But to me, it didn't sound enough like the original Crichton, which I thought would have been a better callback to have a completely different voice, as in the original Crichton's voice, David Ross.
Which would have been a great throwback. It would have been a nice little sort of Easter egg then.
Because they used Easter eggs, like, for instance...
A proper Easter egg, I should say.
Aye. like, for instance, they were saying you were built on 2340 or something like that, or 2346, and that's a callback to, was it Hudson? When it actually, you see, it was one of the ones he was getting either rebuilt or I mean, you see the logo and the year it was built. So it's a refresh, a reference back to that episode when it was mentioned about when Crichton was built. And it's the same idea. And I thought it would have been funnier if it had actually been David. He was still saying the lines, but David Ross's voice was coming out.
Yeah, that would have been good.
It would have been a lot better.
Definitely would have been good.
Yeah.
Sadeko put something in that was good. I forget where it was. So sometimes that's the one. Yeah, sometimes the creators did better work under tighter special effects limitations.
Yes. I think that you're right, because you look at a lot of the special effects they've done in the past, most of it is model work rather than CGI. I think because they had a bit more money, they've decided go with CGI. It's like Doctor Who and the dinosaurs.
Yep.
That was out to a third party to do the dinosaurs, and then when they put them together, they had been done incorrectly, so it just looked weird.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same idea. They've put this out to people who didn't understand Red Dwarf and what it's looked like. They basically, there's Red Dwarf, do a CGI of it, and you're sitting there thinking, prefer the model. The model was far superior.
It was, and it also was a signature of the show, and that's what one of the many good qualities of the show, you know, that everybody loves. And I think to change that specifically because you want to market it elsewhere is always a bit of a mistake.
I think that's probably a really good point. When you're messing with something, like for instance the effects, we're all going to be taken out. So when we see the startup, it was, I remember it used to be a case of you always had Holly the very first season explaining it. And then when it went on to second season, then they started doing the bits that were in the show. I thought, that was only 2 seasons, the first and the second season. And then that for every season afterwards. So you get used to that part. But you always get used to, there's always the flyby of Red Dwarf and you see the model in all its glory. And then you see this one where it's a flyby and it's a CGI and you're sitting there thinking, yep. And I still want to see Lister with his big red paintbrush.
Yeah.
It's that type of thing. It's just a case of it takes you out straight away.
It did. Yeah, there were too many moments like that, unfortunately, for classic Red Dwarf fans, really. There was one, where is it? In the Cassandra episode, which is the next one after the 3-parter. That was interesting because you mentioned earlier that they had planned, one of the ideas that they had was to kill off Rimmer. And of course, they bump into the fortune-telling computer. And she actually predicts that he's going to die. So I did wonder, was that something they were going to be doing later on in the series? Were we going to, you know...
I've got issues with that episode, although it is definitely one of my favourites in this season. I've got 1 or 2 major issues with that.
Yeah.
I still liked it, but...
That's it. That's the story of this season. There's so much to like, but there's a little too many falls from grace.
Yes. We'll finish off with this back in the red. There's a couple of things that I noticed that I thought were weird. The cupcake, the muffin, the blueberry muffin. Did you notice that? A Tesco muffin. You know Tesco. Tesco is a
Yeah,
UK store.
Yeah.
You look at the blueberry muffin, it's a Tesco muffin. He puts it down, and the cake or the wee cup it's in, it's all stamped Tesco all around it. I thought, you think they would have actually just gone to one and bought a cupcake that was clear or white or nothing on it? But
could they have done it deliberately?
I don't know.
I think a deliberate sort of,
it may have been, but to me, it just looked like they've just dragged a cupcake, put it down, and not thought about it. It just seemed, it was almost like a cupcake. Get me a cupcake, boom, and I'm sitting there thinking. Normally, that would be, you look at their beers, they're all made sure all the beers look like a legitimate GMC brand. And everything else they've done, they've always had some type of other brand over the top of it to make sure. Yet with that, I'm sitting there going, really? Tesco?
Yeah, it was. I think maybe, it's hard to know if it was deliberate or just a sloppy... a sloppy bit of prop work.
I thought it was just a sloppy bit of prop work, and to me, it just sort of made me go, ow. And I didn't like it.
Yeah.
They did some great stuff, like the plaster scene.
Remind me.
That was the screensaver. Remember, they realised they were in the artificial... I keep on saying artificial reality, but it's not.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Psycho thingy. Whatever it was.
Psychotropic drug thing, yeah.
Yes, right. And they says they had to find the exit. And then Kat says, there's a button here that says E11T. And they're going, huh? There says 11 is XI in Roman numerals, EXIT.
Yeah.
And they're going, we're definitely in it because she's definitely smarter than normal.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I thought was actually really good.
It was.
I forgot about that. They went into the screensaver. And they were all the plaster scene models.
I forget that part.
That was the bit with the igloo and stuff like that, and they're looking for the power source. And he says, I found it. It's power ketchup. And they're saying, power ketchup? It says power sauce. And I thought that section was really good. It's a typical when Cat's actually on the ball. It's actually just superb. Like even the bit when they're flying in and their bits getting ripped off the ship. And he said, we've lost the engine. We've lost the engines. Does that not mean, am I right in thinking that might cause issues with her flying? But the one thing that annoyed me as well, which didn't, not annoyed me, I thought that's a complete and utter waste. See when they're flying down and they get dragged in by the heat vent and they're flying down and they can hear the pulse, or there's something alive up here and they see it's a rat and they swerve around it.
And
then you see the rat from the front and then it goes boom, there's a doot, and then it flies off. And then inside you hear and there's the red lights and they're just all going, oh, to me, that's how it should have stayed. See the fact that they showed outside with the...
Yes, it took you out of it.
It took you out of it. Whereas that was just to show you the CGI.
That's right. It's gratuitous,
And then what they could have done is just pull back and then you could have seen the rat tumbling forward as they come down. So that one bit, I just thought, that took you right out of it. And I think it was a case of somebody's told them, well, use CGI here to make it. No.
CGI is always the downfall. It's always the downfall. You know, so there's a time and a place.
Where they're flying past them to show the difference in size, I thought that was fine because they weren't interacting. They just had a CGI rat, which obviously didn't look like a rat because it was CGI. Nowadays, you can get a CGI rat that looks like a rat. But and then they swerved past it. So that was just to give you a reference of the size, which was fine. But the bit where they're actually showing it, and I thought, no.
I think the bit where they showed the rat should have been something like From the Talons of Weng Chiang, like a very sort of literal, tunnel, and have just a really over the top, fake, proppy looking rat. Just the gag.
It would have worked a lot better. So it would have.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's
definitely.
unfortunate. It took us out. Yeah, that was a really good gag. The bit when they're all sitting in and going,
Yeah.
and and then you see the red lights, so it's obviously they're inside it because it's all darker, and then they show you the outside, and I thought, oh no.
They should have kept the camera on them, and that's what makes it so great, because you are going through that, you're experiencing that moment with the characters,
and you're picturing it in there. You don't need to be showing it. That's the good thing. Red Dwarf have always done things that something happens off screen and you're going, because you know what's happening and you don't need to actually see it because your imagination can make it a lot worse. And I think they take that out and showing you that CGI took me right out of it. But
yeah, totally agree.
The same idea with this, they did the CGI with the plasticine models. If that was done with CGI or it was done with plasticine and stop motion, it's more likely been CGI. I thought, what?
That does work better because there's a more organic quality to that.
And because
CGI is just
it doesn't need to look real because it's meant to look like plasticine models, so the CGI you don't notice. It's just as good as stop motion. However, it just goes to show the difference. If they're trying to make something look realistic at the time, CGI just didn't work that way. They wanted something to make look fake, so they could have instead of stop motion, they could do it with CGI, and it looks fine. So it just goes to show the two different bits, which was just unfortunate. And even some of the prison scenes, like for instance, explaining what the Canaries were. I've signed us up, made it worse. I've signed us up, and I'm sitting there thinking, why you just turn around and say I didn't sign for it, that type of thing. But obviously, it's explained a bit more in Cassandra. But it's just the initial introduction to certain things. I thought they seemed to wanted it all in just so they could continue with the season. It's almost like they had to fill about 15, 20 minutes.
It kind of felt like, okay, we got this season. Let's just do it. Let's just get it in the can because we've got bigger and better things to be focusing on, and we've got the CGI. We can fill in with that, blah blah blah. And again, like Sadako had said, it took the soul out of it.
Yeah, it did. It's basically, unfortunately, especially for the Back in the Red, the introduction to the new ship. Considering they've introduced the four main characters in the last 2 or 3 seasons quite well, again, each season. Whereas they've got a whole new ship, they can reintroduce them. You look at episode 1 of season 1, the introduction of the crew. You only saw them for a wee bit, yet you knew more about them. And obviously they couldn't have Todd Hunter because the guy played Todd Hunter. What was he in? Was it Cold Feet?
The guy that played Luke?
Todd Hunter, the first officer, remember? Okay. He wasn't in this season, but same idea as Peterson. I think he had another starring role. I think it was Cold Feet I read. He was in. Can't remember his name, but I know his face. But in the very first episode, season 1, you met Hollister, Todd Hunter, Chen, Selby, Peterson, Kachansky. And you knew those characters, even though you'd only seen them for 5 minutes before. They're dead, Dave. They're all dead. So, whereas in this season, you had 3 full half-hour episodes. And apart from Hollister and the Psycho Warden, none of the other ones seem to actually... They just introduced their job.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem as if you knew the type of character. You just saw the type of job. It's worth they were.
Yeah. Yeah, they should have focused more on, the Psycho Warden more.
Even the doctor with the cat.
Yeah.
It basically... his colour coordinated organs, fine, no issues with that. But even the walls of his stomach seem to be decorated, and I thought, it was taking the joke that wee step too far. The colour coordinated organs, no issues, didn't have an issues with that. But as soon as they mentioned the wallpaper decorations, because the walls, his stomach walls seem to be decorated.
Yeah, they overused that. They sort of had it, and then they didn't know when to stop with it.
And then even with the heartbeat, thought was hilarious. Like, do you think I'm going to have the same as the humans? Do-dum, do-dum, do-dum. And I thought,
like a funky heartbeat, yeah.
They had the funky heartbeat, and then he said his pulse. And then I thought they went a wee bit too far with it, because it's not the fact is his pulse was different, so it worked in coordination with his heartbeat. It's the sounds they used for it. It's too obvious it was a drum, because you listen to it, it's not organic. You can hear it's one of those. Is it the tom-tom drum when they're doing it?
Yeah,
it just sounds like somebody's accompanying it, whereas the heartbeat having the rhythm was great. And then they introduced his pulse, which they could have actually did the two of them separately and then put them in, and you probably wouldn't have noticed the different tones. But because they put it on top, it just sounds like somebody with the tom-tom drums accompanying it. And I thought it just takes it out a wee bit.
Yeah.
And I think it's not so much they just extended the joke, it's just that they've obviously says, oh, they need to sound different, so do this. And I thought because they needed to sound different, they could have had them a different tone, but the same. And it just sort of took me out, because I heard the tom-tom drums rather than the actual gag.
The
Sadako, if we don't like Red Dwarf, then.
I was just noticing, going back to the Hollister thing, Sadako had said the problem is that the guest cast crew this season felt more stereotyped than people. And even Hollister felt a bit cartoonishly self-serving. And it made me think he did feel like more of an Americanized, sitcom-y type character.
Yeah, and even coming up with the Dennis the Donut Boy line. Funny line, but how would anybody become a captain just because of blackmail and not be found out? Because that was, he was trying to make sure they didn't get found out. Yeah, season 1. Remember, Lister, I do respect you. So there's the ultimate one who bucks authority. Respected Hollister. That's why he wouldn't. He said they didn't want to give the cat, even though he respects you. He respected him. He just doesn't want to actually turn in the cat. Yeah, and this one, he's Dennis the Donut Boy. And I thought it's a good joke, as in find out I'm just Dennis the Donut Boy. It's a good catchy joke, but when you look at it, it sort of changes the character.
Yeah.
Because he was petty and he wanted that sexual magnetism for himself. And it's that type of thing. It just seemed to take them out. And I think it's right. They were all stereotypes. So, but for the first 3 episodes to get into it, I thought it was probably the weakest part of the season. And considering that's almost, that's what,
it's almost halfway through.
Yeah.
Although, saying that, the episode 4, Cassandra, introduces my favourite character throughout this season.
Well, go on then.
Kill Crazy. And Stackles put him up. Probably one of the who felt he should have been in his element, and indeed would have been back in season 5.
Is he the one that went on to EastEnders?
Yes, that's Kill Crazy.
I thought I recognised him.
Jack Wood. Even the big guy, Baxter. I've seen him in a load of other comedies, and he always played the big dumb guy.
Yeah.
Ricky Glover, he's good as well because he's played similar parts before. The big muscle, the mean muscle, but
I knew I'd seen him in other things.
And he's played it in other comedies as well, playing either the dumb big muscle or something like that. So I have seen it before, but I thought Jack Wood is Kill Crazy. Kill Crazy is my favourite character throughout the season. And considering he's a guest character, how can he actually be your favourite character? And to me, he actually outshines everybody. Anytime he's on screen, he just seems to outshine. Even when he's saying nothing. You look at the cinema scene when with the shower scene, and it just passes by the crowd, and he's just and it just looks like it just looks Kill Crazy. It just looks nuts. Just literally just staring at the screen and looking around, seeing how pleased he is. And I thought, even doing nothing, he is superb.
Yep.
And he just first time you meet him, he's just I thought, I love that character. That is just superb.
He is.
I noticed a little Star Wars joke reference as well with him, because when they were coming through a doorway, he banged his head.
Yeah, that was the one
for the stormtroopers.
Stormtrooper who came through the doing.
And in the later scene, he had the mark on his head. So I thought
But even that, I thought was great. He was just so Kill Crazy. Let's get in there and bang, and that was him out for the whole mission.
Yeah,
he was a naturally comic character. He was really good.
And considering, because I had threw that part to my wife, and she said, "Is that really him?" Because he's not a very nice character in EastEnders. No. And it just goes to show the different how he can actually portray two different types of characters so well.
Yeah,
you can see him as Kill Crazy because he's just so different from what she's seen in EastEnders.
And I think that's the danger that actors face if they're in a role for too long, especially a role like that where he's just such an evil character.
Yeah, because I watched a bit of
EastEnders, but
I couldn't see him as anything other than Kill Crazy.
Yeah, unless he was cast as another evil character, but Kill Crazy isn't evil; he's just mad.
It's just hilariously funny and mad, and I think he's definitely one of the, as Sadako says, a good comedy character you would run a mile from in real life. He's just one of those characters you love to watch and just want to see how disaster things are going to turn up round about him.
If they again, Sadako has put something in the chat this season, they couldn't decide from the start what the dynamic was going to be. If they had that kind of a dynamic with the Kill Crazy type vibe and that kind of a character, I think it would have been a lot better.
I think it would have been that's what I'm saying. I think I liked Cassandra because it felt a bit more Red Dwarfish.
Yeah,
I think it is a stronger one. Once they've introduced the Canaries, they've introduced the characters like Ackerman, Baxter, Kill Crazy, and even Cassandra, Geraldine McEwen,
Miss Marple.
I recognised her for a lot of things, but I had to look up her name. But I recognised her, but it's the same as one of those ones. To me, she's one of the ones she's always been in things like, she would be in the things like Miss Jean Brodie or a hospital drama as a maid or someone.
She was in a lot of period dramas, things like that.
Estate type of things. And seeing her in that with the glitter all over, I just thought, looks so unusual. But same again, they're getting some well-known characters to do that, and even the acronyms they're getting good at, because obviously they had the polymorph, they had the clitoris. Remember the campaign for whatever it was. This one they've got Canaries. It said it's a convict army, nearly all retarded, inbred, evil sheepshaggers. Superb. They've basically somebody sat down, right, here's Canary, what will we make it mean? And they've literally just gone through what have we got. And somebody said to me, somebody's not had the idea. They've had the name and they've tried to slot something into it. And I thought, yep, that works.
Yep, that works, yeah.
Really well. And I thought, superb. But even the missions they were getting sent on, I thought, yeah, Canaries work for that, because as the description of, they used to send the Canaries down the mines, and if it came back up, then they would send the important people in. And I thought calling them the Canaries was fine. Having them all dressed in white was fine. Yellow was fine, because they stood out. They weren't hiding. They weren't sneaking in the dark. But the one thing about this episode, even though I loved it, annoyed me, right? Because remember, nobody called me by Rimmer. That's what Arnold told him. So how does he know? Cassandra know he's Rimmer, right? Remember, that was the whole conversation. That's why he got Not to change his jumper with him, so it said Rimmer. Initially, I thought, well, he'll have his jumper because everybody else has got their jumper with their name on it. But he had this big fleecy thing over the top. But for some reason, it disappeared.
Interesting.
And then Not went in with the Rimmer jumper on. And I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, that would make sense if she hadn't called him Arnold.
Yeah.
Because how did she know his name? Nobody mentioned it. So if she knows his name is Arnold, she's more than likely to know his name is Rimmer.
Yeah, pretty obvious. Yeah,
that's the way I looked at it there, because as soon as he says, play back, did anybody call me Rimmer? And I'm sitting there thinking, aye, but she called you Arnold. And I went back and rewatched that, the introduction part. Nobody mentioned any names until he said, Cassandra says, hello, Arnold. And then you'll say good night, and Christine will have it. And so I'm sitting there thinking, she knows their names. So why does she only know their first names? Because it made zero sense. Because called her Christine, didn't he? I think he called her, Cassandra called her Christine, and it might have been Kachansky, because that would have been on her jumper. All the other ones called by the names on their jumper, fair enough, but she called him Arnold, so how did she know his name?
Yes, very interesting.
And that's the bit I thought, oh, if she hadn't called him anything other than a name at all, and you said you, and didn't refer to him, then the Rimmer part would have worked, because all the other ones had their name, so you can understand that aspect. I just thought, the fact that she called him Arnold from start, then why would you assume she didn't know his surname as well?
Yeah,
it's still one of my favourites, but it just, that wee bit was a wee bit niggly.
There was an interesting thing, Darren, you picked this up in that it would have been a fun parallel if, instead of the actress that they did choose, who's wonderful, by the way, they had Zoe Wanamaker as Cassandra, because that would have been a great Doctor Who crossover then.
That's true.
And they actually look
preempted it.
slightly similar, the two actors.
Yeah. Because I initially thought that's who she was, because I was thinking of period drama, and I was thinking Harry Potter. And I thought, no, it's not Miss.
No.
The one that taught them. My daughter watched all of them. My daughter read all the books, and I've seen them, I think, twice. I can't even remember her name. It's the one that taught them. McGonagall, the one that actually taught the broomsticks.
It took me a second to pull that one out of the back files, because it's been years since I've read the Harry Potter books.
I see my daughter's still got all her first editions. She actually been reading that long. She's basically bought them when they first appeared on the shelves. And she gets annoyed now. In her 30s, she gets annoyed when people turn around and say, you don't understand Harry Potter. Really?
Excuse me?
She's literally, the first book she got was a first edition, and when it was out initially. So she's been reading the first book from when it was first published.
Wow.
And so she's always, I remember standing when she was 11, 12, standing at 12 o'clock at night so she can get, because the shop was opening at midnight to sell it. And I had to stand there with her. So I remember doing all that, and I still can never remember the names because they weren't my type of books. But she loved them, and basically, which means I watched the movies as well when they came out. I had to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I enjoyed them.
It was the last time a young generation got sort of excited about books.
Aye, exactly.
It was that, yeah.
There, people, kids dressed up.
Oh,
even
God,
the ones dressed up, they had a wee Z in their head and just standing there waiting.
Yeah. It was the same type of fervor, the same type of passion and absolute joy, unbridled joy that generation had for Harry Potter that we all had growing up with A New Hope, with Star Wars as it was then known. You know,
it's only Star Wars. It isn't called A New Hope. That's just a renaming of the original.
Exactly. But that's that same sense of absolute unbridled enthusiasm.
Oh, I definitely, because I remember my dad took me and my brother to see The Empire Strikes Back because he'd just given us the money to go to the pictures to see Star Wars. And that we'd been talking that much about it. He says, right, when the new one came out, I'll take you. I remember it was the first time my dad ever took me to the pictures. And it was one of the greatest things because we were all full of anticipation. Basically waiting, and my dad, and then on in the bus, he didn't even drive in, so he took us on the bus. And that was the first time we went in with my dad. So we're going to the shops, and he's going, where are you going? We're going to get some sweets and juice to take in because it's cheaper. None of that stuff. Walk in, my dad goes up, there's a big bucket of juice, and there's a hot dog, and there's the thing, and I'm sitting there going,
wow, this is great. Yeah.
So, and we're sitting there with all this food because that's what my dad did, and that's what I grew up. So see, when I used to take my kids to the pictures to see Harry Potter or whatever they wanted to see, that's what we would do. Yeah, none of this taking stuff in. I would go up and get the hot dogs, the nachos, the big juice, the popcorn, the big bag of sweets, because I don't care. Experience. The whole experience, that's it, because that's what I went to see Judge Dredd 3D. I went to see that 12 times in the cinema. And each time I went, it cost me £35 because it was £8 for the ticket. Sorry, it was £12 for the ticket. The rest was food and juice.
Yeah.
And I did that 12 times, I think it was, basically to see that movie. And people are saying, how can you afford that? Well, I was divorced at the time, so I was single and I had nothing else to do. So that's why I could do it.
Why not? Why not?
Exactly. And it was the anticipation to go and see. Like I was the same when Dredd 3D came out because I'm a big Judge Dredd fan. I had that anticipation to go and see it, and I was so waiting for it to start, and I wanted to see it. And the first time I saw it, superb. And I wanted to go back again and again. It's the same idea with the books. But to me, it was the same idea with Red Dwarf when it came on. And this one, I think because... No, this one, the one before, because it was on hiatus for 3 years. I was like that when I heard Red Dwarf starting. It's the same as Promised Land when that came out. I was the same. Can't wait. Need to get it. Whoa. And that type of thing. It's... Red Dwarf used to drag me in the same way. And after seeing this season, I was a wee bit more, how shall I say, off the boil. And it's because, although they had enough Red Dwarf there was too many farcical slapstick bits. I thought they did it just because, not for any reason except just because. Like, for instance, the saluting part, I thought they put it in for a good laugh, which it was, and then they extended it because they didn't know what.
That was just like, oh, come on.
I know it sounds terrible,
and I love the salute. I love the Rimmer salute.
I love it as well. I've given the Rimmer salute and I've received it from Chris Barry. So yeah, I love that salute.
Awesome. That is awesome. That's it. That is sacred. That is sacred. So it's a bit like, Spock's live long and prosper hand gesture. You don't mess with the salute. You don't mess with, the Vulcan salute. It's
I was just thinking that it's sort of up there with, with Spock's gesture.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically somebody does that, I can't do it with that finger. There you go, because these two fingers actually the nerve damage, and those ones they actually drag it across. And I can't do it at all with this one. But I used to love it. And it's the same idea. How many times did you practice going, oh, your fingers and to get it? And even remember, was it Star Trek 3? Search Your Spock? T'Pol. Remember T'Pol?
Yeah.
T'Pol, not the Enterprise T'Pol. To get it right, because they said to her, don't worry, we'll get somebody else to
T'Pau.
They were going to get somebody else to do the Vulcan salute, and she says, no, it has to be in the screen with me doing it. So what they did was she got her to tape her fingers. So
I remembered hearing something about that. Yeah.
So her fingers were taped because she couldn't do it naturally. But they says, don't worry, what we'll do is we'll have you, and then what we'll do is we'll just get somebody to do the salute against a material so it looks like you. And she says, no, it has to be in the screen. So she got them to tape her fingers to do it. So it looked more authentic, because she knew she wasn't a big Star Trek fan, but she was aware in the franchise this was a big thing. So she wanted to make sure it looked right. She was a professional. She knew it was important. Not just a case of she does that and then they cut to the hand showing it and then puts it down. She wanted it to show that she's doing it. So it's a case of it's important to the franchise.
It's authentic. Yeah.
And I think the Rimmer salute, just because it went a wee bit too far and then he kept doing this when he was coming down, I thought.
It was just like, what?
And then doing it backwards to come back up. And I thought, it's almost like somebody knew about the salute and then decided, but do you know what will be funnier? No, it's perfect as it is. You don't need to make it any funnier because it's funny. That was the whole thing about it. It was just a wee different salute that he's the only one that ever did. He didn't need to keep going and going and going and going. And do you know, a problem is, I know it sounds terrible. I think, especially when British producers probably do it because they see how American producers do it. They think you need to dumb it down. So you have to dumb it down and make it ludicrous.
Yeah.
Sorry, some of the best comedies that come out of the States aren't ludicrous or hilarious. Some of the best ones that came out are like that as well. I'm not denying that.
It's a mix. Yeah, it's a mix. There's some brilliant comedies.
But if I think that's what they did, and they thought, we're going to have to sell it to America, and you look at a lot of the American comedy, it's dumbed down. We need to dumb it down. I'm sitting there thinking, why? No. Because they're going to purchase Red Dwarf. They're purchasing it because it's smart comedy.
Exactly.
And I think what they've done is they've dumbed it down, which was detrimental.
Yeah, that was evident with Hollister's character.
Yes. Mm-hmm. And even, I'm trying to think, what was the doctor, the psychiatrist.
Yeah.
To me, that was a dumbed down character because it's almost all happy, like when they're getting marched to the toilet. And he's going,
that would work.
Lovely. We've got a gun to us. Isn't this lovely? And I'm sitting there thinking, really?
You know what I was thinking about watching that character? You know, in Airplane, you've got the character that keeps leaping through the scenes. That's genuinely funny. Mm-hmm. But it was like they were almost trying to make that kind of a character out of him, but it didn't work.
It's almost like he's a hippie type of thing, and then we'll constantly make him act like that. And you're sitting there thinking, really? Like the airplane ones, they did that deliberately, so you had the guys constantly jumping through the screens or
I
something
loved him. I used to
on fire, tumbling, or Airplane's just a superb movie. I think definitely better than Airplane 2, but Airplane is, I got it in physical media before they changed it again. But I think it's the same idea. I think, yes, they've dumbed that character down because stereotypical he'll be this type of character. Right, this is your type of character. Is there anything else? No, just this. And they play the best they can, unfortunately. But even when they were on their first mission, that's what I was saying. I thought some of the funny Red Dwarf stuff came out. Like, for instance, Rimmer. Something moved over there. He says, "What's it look like?" He's sort of shaking. Like, that's your shadow, sir. And he's basically describing something that looks as if it's in fear, and that's your shadow, sir. And I thought, that was a nice wee, something's moving over there, and I thought they were going to give it the, remember Crichton in the last one, when they were Polymorph or Emohawk, whereas he's shooting at everything in Polymorph, Crichton saying, "Oh, don't be silly, it's no, it's the wall." I thought they were going to go down that route and reuse that one, but they didn't. Actually paid it off quite well by slagging Rimmer, which they always used to do. So it was a nice wee callback to the way they used to do it.
Yeah.
By reintroducing the fact is he's the one that's the coward, and they're explaining it to him. But he also used the fact that he knows where he's the best place to hide. So he knows he's a coward. And I thought it's they have nice callbacks, and then later on they have ones where in the same episode they have things that make no sense and it just drag out a wee bit.
Is that a result of maybe like two different writing teams trying to blend together to make an episode? I think one American writing team and one.
Well, I think they said they were written by, was it Alex something or other? So it was only Doug and Alex. Was it something Armstrong or Alex something or other? I can't remember off the top of my head.
Because it does have that different feel to it. It definitely doesn't feel.
Think it does. Because I think it is. It's a case of I don't know if this guy was an American and they brought him in just to help.
Yeah, American. I don't know, and I'm kind of just guessing, but
that's what it felt like, as if it was two different styles. Whereas you had Grant and Naylor beforehand, the two of them obviously complemented each other. And some of the other ones where somebody else wrote with Doug, like when Robert Llewellyn did his bit as well. He knew the characters. He knew the. So when he wrote it, he obviously wrote it because he understood his character and all the other characters, so it could work. The fact that they brought somebody else in, and I can't even remember if it's the same guy throughout the whole season. I think you're right. It basically looks like it's two different styles mashed together. And some of them work, some of them don't. And I think it's if somebody's actually turned around, and it's the problem is the ones that work are the typical Red Dwarf humour.
Always.
The ones that didn't work is when they've actually extended it, or it's a different farcical type of humour. Like for instance, when they're all sitting in the toilet, and there's the psychologist sitting with a pair of white stockings on. Was that meant to be funny? Is that what was that trying to thing me? Because
was that the thing where Crichton was trying to he was taking literally the advice to envisage them.
That's exactly it. Basically, trying to say no. So he basically took them at gunpoint, took them into the toilet, told them to take their pants down and sit down, and it panned across, and there's the two guys with their trousers down at their knees, the third guy trousers down at his knees, and a pair of white suspenders stockings on. Then there's the two ladies with their pants down at their ankles.
Yeah.
And it's the fact is, was that meant to be funny? Why? Oh, look, he wears tight stockings under his thing, isn't he? And you're sitting there thinking,
Was that really necessary? Yeah,
exactly. That's the way. I didn't find that funny. I just thought that's meant to be funny. That was the problem. It's you notice things that were meant to be funny, and that's the parts I thought was a wee bit weird. Things that were funny, and then they went too long. But you could see where the joke would have been better if it stopped. But other ones, there's jokes there, and you're sitting there thinking they meant that to be funny. Didn't work, but they meant it to be. And I think the one with the tights was meant to be funny.
I think what makes it work is the viewers' loyalty to those characters, the actors being so familiar with the material, and the being able to get lost in that bit of it.
Mm-hmm.
And those other points where you get pulled out of the story is are the problems, where you're kind of like, it would have been great, but then they threw in these weird curves that just didn't seem to need to be there.
Yes.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep. And there's Sadako as well. He might have found it funny, but on reflection, the Crichton of season 3 to 6 could never have pictured doing this. And I quite agree.
Yeah.
Pulling a gun on them.
That might have been the Crichton where he turned off his, in the Kennedy assassination one, where he deactivates Crichton's honor chip or whatever, morality chip. Yeah. That would be like something that Crichton would do.
But then again, all the other things that Crichton would have done weren't within that one. But yes, if he's got his morality chip, or what was his other one? His guilt chip as well. So when he didn't have his guilt chip, there were certain things he could do without worrying about it. But I don't know. It was you look at what was the one? Was it Gunman the Apocalypse? It was the one when they were actually in. They were they came out of No, it wasn't Gunman the Apocalypse. It was the other one, the Despair Squid. Remember? And they wake up better than life, or back to reality. That's what it was. Where Jake Bullet. Why did Jake Bullet want to shoot himself with the gun? It only had one bullet, and they're all lined up. Their heads all lined up. Remember? Yeah. Because he killed someone. So his guilt chip he couldn't live, so he was going to shoot himself. And they four were all lined up. And I thought that to me was it sort of took me back to that, but not in a good way, because Crichton wouldn't have done that. Crichton wouldn't have pulled a gun. He would have a gun when they would go on missions, like he's always had a gun or a bazooka or whatever, because they were going to other ships and it was to protect the crew. Same as he would have had it when he was on a Canary mission. But him pulling the gun on those ones at the beginning just didn't seem quite right, because it wasn't Crichton.
Yeah.
I said that. I feel like I eventually did get that back to reality. It just took a wee while for my mind to go tick, 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 tick.
Could you say that Crichton was a little bit sort of unbalanced at this point, because they tried to reset him to factory settings, and then his files got corrupted again? So perhaps he was just a little unstable.
I think it would have been better if that was the case. They spent an episode of doing things without Crichton, but just Crichton being in the background cleaning up and gradually recognizing things. But suddenly, I see you, Wayne Dwibley, and and corruption. I just thought too quick. There's other things have dragged out. Yeah, something like that. They just sort of went, boom, he's back. I would have preferred for an episode where they're doing things like try to escape and whatever, and because remember, all this is in the psychedelic state. So he's had his memory wiped and he's got it all back, held the gun on him under the psychedelic thing. Because he licked the envelope. So the bit where he'd had the reset to factory settings wasn't real. Remember. because that was all under the hypnosis or psychotropic drug order. So, in effect, it wouldn't have happened. So it's that type of thing. So yes, it could have been seen that way, but unfortunately it was done after the elected envelope. If it wasn't done after the elected envelope, then it was the normal Crichton. But after the elected envelope is when he got his memories wiped. It's that, you see what I mean? So it comes back to the fact is how could they actually lick the envelope and go under the drug as anyway. But Cassandra, we keep going back to the first three, but Cassandra, I thought it was one of the better episodes of the season.
It was probably my favourite of the season.
I think it's definitely the favourite. The one next to it was good, but I think same idea. I thought they dragged it out a wee bit too long, which as a one episode one, it would have been perfect, and it would have probably been my favourite. But because they dragged it out too, it drops down a step. But definitely Cassandra. Even the way they finished with Cassandra, accordingly, she was doing all this to make Lister suffer because he's the one that destroys her.
Yeah. It was clever. It was clever,
but in effect, if they're saying is she lies, so she doesn't necessarily predict the future. She just lies because she's seen her future, so she can see bits of the future. The fact that
she's selective about what she actually tells people.
She also told Rimmer, remember, that he was still going to die.
Yeah.
Along with everybody else except Kachansky and all that. So, in effect, he didn't. The rest of the Canaries didn't. The only one that died was not. So she says everybody else was going to die except those. Remember. Because he was going to get shot through the head with a bolt gun. Never happened. So she can't predict the future. She can only... So she manipulates it to make things come to pass.
Yeah. Power of suggestion and all that.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it was a weird episode, but I think there was enough fun parts in it that made it Red Dwarf through and through. It was the most Red Dwarf of this season. That's what I would think is a probably easy way of doing it. So, and that left to the midpoint, Cry TV. See, I always thought it was Cry TV, but it's not. Well, it's Cry TV. It's the way it's spelled CRYIE, Cry. Because it's not Cry T, so there's no T in it, so it's Cry TV, as in Cry TV.
Interesting.
It's weird. It's just because I always used to call it Cry TV.
IMDb calls it Cry TV. Interestingly, but that's not necessarily, that's not foolproof for sure.
Because I'm sure I'll need to double check because it says rip. It may have been a spelling mistake when I've ripped it, but I was sure it was Cry.
Cry TV would have made more sense.
That's the first four.
Because they don't call him Crichty, they call him Crites. Mr. calls them Crites. But Cry TV would have been the more sensible title, I think.
Season 8, there you go. Season 8. Oh, it's Crichty TV. CRYTIE. I've obviously, when I've ripped it, I've misspelled.
Well, I like yours better, though. Crichty TV, it doesn't feel like Crichton,
Yeah, the whole thing didn't feel like Crichton because accordingly it happened because he got a bump in the head and reprogrammed. But they never mentioned about getting reprogrammed back. Yeah, I mean, is he still that way right up until the end?
I take it when this was done, it looks like 1999. That was the birth of the sort of prankster era, where they had these videos of people pranking and which actually started out as like candid camera way back.
Way
back.
Candid camera was far superior. But yes, you had things like Punked and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that was sort of reminiscent, I think, of that era when things like that were quite popular.
I think it was definitely taking the mickey out of them.
Oh, yeah.
I definitely think, and reality shows as well. I think it was taking the mickey.
Yes.
Oh, it definitely was. Yeah.
And
yeah,
Crichton
it was
had like a beard on. Jeremy Beadle, the character we used to have on TV over here.
Yeah. Aye, because Noel Edmonds used to do that as well. It was always
yes.
So I think it was sort of taking the mickey out of those. However, it was the least un-Crichton one. And it's even with the bump in the head and it's changed and everything, you're sitting there thinking, I don't know.
I found it funny.
In it.
I found it funny at times. I thought it was actually funny because it was Crichton doing all this stuff, like taking the mick out of all of those personality types and things like that, and is sitting there with all of his gold chains on, and he's sort of like running everything.
His black outfit suddenly was gold,
like a bit like Al Pacino. You know, he had a bit of an Al Pacino thing going on there.
Bribing guards and stuff like that openly.
Yeah. But it was, you know, like you said, it wasn't really true to Crichton's character.
Aye.
Even if he had had a bump on the head, it was still a little bit of a stretch.
Aye. And the funny thing was as well, there was one part in it I couldn't stop laughing at.
Remember he said, crazy?
That's my George Formby collection. Remember he says, George Formby collection. You get your hanging ropes now while there's still some left. and I was not myself because that's my collection sitting there waiting to be watched once I get time to it. Yeah, and I'm sitting there thinking, I'm saying nothing about the George Formby collection. I've got the collection sitting there, and I was just noting at that part because a lot of people would sit there, especially if they were watching it now. George Formby, who's that? It was an old comedian in the 80s, and nowadays most people wouldn't even know who they were, who he was, and that's what I was laughing at. I'm sitting there with the box set sitting right there, ready to watch, and they were going on about it 30 odd years ago.
Bit of art imitating life.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sitting there going, terrible. I'm sitting here. Do you know that was actually, they were meant to create TV, they were actually going to call it something different. Do you know what it was based on? Remember the subplot of this episode? The pardon.
Mm-hmm.
Or not the pardon, the appeal. No strings attached. They were going to call this episode. Then they decided to focus more on the Crichton TV. And I think the no strings attached would have probably given the punchline away, and that's why they get rid of it.
Yeah.
Because he gets his guitar, no strings. If they no strings attached, and he was talking about his appeal, and the whole episode was called No Strings Attached.
And he led Rimmer to believe that it was to get them all both an appeal to get out completely. Yeah.
But I think they had to change the name from No Strings Attached. I think it would have given that punchline away too quickly because they kept going on about the appeal. If it was called No Strings Attached, I think some people, I don't know, it would have been a case of it's all to do with the strings because it's called No Strings Attached, and he gets his guitar back with no strings. So I think my mind would have just went tick, 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 and it would have ruined the punchline. And I think the fact that they didn't call it and the appeal come through and it turns around, I've got this. Well, you didn't think it was we're sentenced, did you? And I thought,
well, I did wonder. I thought they don't normally give you anything to hang yourself with in prison. You can't have anything like that. You know, they always, they would always remove anything like that. So yeah.
So I thought the name change was perfect because it did actually name it proper. It would have given it away, because if they had called it No Strings Attached, I think too many people would have actually realised it was all about the guitar and the strings. So it would have led up to too much. Calling it Karate TV, then that suddenly the main plot became a side plot or a side point that they could build up to punchline at the end. So in effect, it was all about the appeal. The Karate TV was just a distraction, so you didn't think about the appeal, although they kept mentioning it. And I think that worked for this episode, although it was the least Crichton-like episode. Even though he's lucky enough to jump out of a plane without a parachute and land in a hot tub in the Playboy Mansion, which I thought was a good line.
It was.
But I thought the pranks didn't make sense for some of it. They were funny in some parts, and then they were unfunny in other parts. Like, for instance, remember the big reveal? It was Ackerman's one he's doing it in. Right?
Yeah.
So he was putting the magazines down, the music in and stuff like that. Then
tubes everywhere.
And then he takes a bite of the sandwich, and what does he do? Doesn't he leave it lying? He puts it behind a couch, a cushion. And I'm sitting there thinking, why? Because he's meant to be lying beside us somewhere, or lying on the floor, or on the coffee table somewhere. But why hide it? Because you've already destroyed all this. You don't want it suddenly, or it'll leave a smell, because it's onions. It's not going to leave a big smell.
No.
Unless there was hundreds of onions all lying around you, you're not going to actually notice how cheese and onion sandwich. And the fact that he had it under the cushion, I'm sitting there thinking, makes zero sense. But that's the same idea. I see stupid things like that and say, makes zero sense. Even about when he's cutting off the pubic hair and putting it, and he's sort of piling it up, made zero sense as well. You know what I mean? It would have been better actually putting it in the sink round the thing. That type of thing.
I think that was actually funny because he was just going mental. He was just, there wasn't any rhyme or reason to what he was doing.
I know, but it's what I'm saying. It's just wee silly bits like that.
Yeah.
Because the fact for the magazines and the CDs and even the crisp, the packet of biscuits over the bed, I thought was a great touch. They never mentioned it, but see when he's doing that, because I'm sitting there thinking, because I remember I used to sit watching the telly and then turn and go to sleep and bloody crap. You had to get out of bed and fully strip the bed to get all those crumbs off, because you couldn't just brush them off because they were everywhere. And I thought, that is really good. That's somebody who's actually been eating in bed has written that screen. Because no, and that's what I'm saying. So there was so bits, but just a wee bit with the pubic hair where he's sort of he's just sort of lying on top. It just seemed a wee bit
over the top.
A wee bit over the top, the wee step. Everything else was perfect with the CDs, because it's things you wouldn't notice. Because, and if you go into somebody's in the magazines, you don't really notice it until you sit down and go, oh my God, this type of magazine, or the music. You wouldn't notice those things, or get into bed and they would be breadcrumb. But that piled up, it just seemed a wee bit, somebody's pranking this, because the guy couldn't justify anything else. But technically justify that, because it's just piled up. It just didn't make sense. Me, I would have put it in the drain to make it look as if it's back. So it'd be sticking out of the drain. So I know it's weird. But I just think it'd be stupid things like that, and I can't help myself.
There was something just so unbelievably just crazy about that scene when he was trashing the guy's quarters, that I was howling. Even if some of the jokes didn't make a lot of sense, it was just the way it was executed. It was so funny.
Definitely the biggest laugh I had was in that scene, and I know it was silly, but it was the biscuits. And it was just for the simple fact is, I know what that feels like. And it was literally that, because they never mentioned the biscuits. It was the CDs and this and that and this and even the bacon over the lamp. The fact that you put it over the lamp, you couldn't see. Most of the other type of programs like that, they would have it so you could see the shadow or whatever because of the type of lamp. But that type of lamp, I know somebody did that in a car.
Oh my God!
As a prank. Years ago, his friend was a farmer. Well, actually, he was a farmer, but he also had a fishery. So when they got a fish and gutted it,
gross.
He'd literally opened his friend's truck, popped the hood, and put it on the radiator. And
my God!
And accordingly, it was stank his car out for months.
I bet.
That's the thing. So when they put the bacon, yeah, I was laughing at that because I've seen that type of thing done. But it was the breadcrumbs. I was knotting myself. It was the best laugh I had from the season. And it was just because, yeah, I can imagine that because I used to sit in my bed.
It was relatable.
But even the cleanup was funny as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that worked better than the trashing it because you know fine well he's been set up.
Yeah.
And I thought the cleanup was even the bit where he's instead of brushing the biscuits off, he's lifting them and putting them in his pocket. Why? It's just these silly bits like that. I thought was superb.
There's
Even
one moment where he hands like pubes something to Rimmer, and Rimmer puts it in his pocket.
Yeah, he takes it off and he hands it to him and he goes, "Ugh." His pocket. But I thought the cleanup was better, but I definitely think that was probably the funniest bit. The joke played in them. Wee parts of the joke didn't work for me, like as I said, the sandwich under the pillow. I just sort of took me out and I'm sitting there thinking, why?
Yeah, that wouldn't really have much of an impact other than just make a mess.
What I would have actually done then, I would have had an egg mayonnaise or something like that, something that's got quite a strong smell.
Fish,
leave it out.
Kind of fish or something.
And just leave it lying. Yeah, I mean, so leave it lying before you get there. So when it's opened, it's but
or dump some beer in there or something. So that because when that goes off, that's vile.
Yeah, and I could understand why they used the cheese and onion because onion breath. So it's So leaving it lying would have been better, so she could see it was cheese and onion. So if he's date, it was a case of
oh my God, he's eating cheese and onion sandwiches.
Yeah, but hiding it under the pillow made no sense to me, and I suppose it's wee silly things like that. It makes me skip, but other things are funny again. And I definitely think the sandwich was definitely the bit that took me out, but the biscuit crumbs were the funniest part. But there you go. And I do think Sadiq is right that, Rimmer definitely wanted to borrow one because that's what he said. He says, I would take one. He says, they're scared of getting strangled. He says, I wouldn't strangle. He says, I'm not thinking about you. But, yeah. What did you think of Crikey TV all in all?
I think it did have some funny moments, definitely. But it sort of took you out of the Red Dwarf feel. You know, it wasn't really something that you would ever really expect to see in a Red Dwarf series, you know.
There was a couple of good Red Dwarf jokes, but the rest of it
had its moments, but underwhelming overall.
Yeah. And then the next one, although it's a two-parter, Pete. This is the one that actually I think cost most of their budget.
Yeah.
Because of the CGI.
Yeah.
So what did you think of Pete?
Bit of a Jurassic lark, I think.
Very. Especially the way it started with Pete. Not the program, the episode started, how Pete started. because it started with you just go, and it was the one leg. That's what you saw. And you think about Jurassic Park.
That's right. The scene where
where
the foot comes down, yeah.
And that is it. So to me, yes, it was a very Jurassic, as you said, lark. I think if this was one episode rather than split over two, I think it would have been a stronger, funnier episode. And I think it would have been the funniest of this season. But because it was split, it sort of dragged out a wee bit.
What was with all the multi-parters for this season? What was that all about?
It seemed weird, didn't it?
Yeah.
Because it's almost like they went back to doing 6 scripts, but they've been able to spread it over 8 episodes instead of actually writing a single individual one. They extended it. It just seemed weird. I know why they did the first one, which was 3-parter, because they were told they want to do a 1 hour special. But if they did a 1 hour special for that, where would the other one come in and would have had to do another? It just seemed a 3-parter and a 2-parter in this, and then 3 singles. Just weird.
Yeah.
That's why it feels so off. It's sort of out of balance.
Aye. I guess it's out of balance.
In an early series, this would have been done and dusted in 1 episode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's only been one that, although it was individual episodes, that it told you what happened the week before, because although it was a separate episode, there was a bit of continuation on. I think that was what was it? Was it last season? They told you what happened the episode before, because there was a link between the two. Was it to do with He Ain't Heavy, He's My Brother?
Yeah.
Yes.
I think they'd lost in the one before. They had lost the drive, and in this one they were trying to get the drive, and that's where the link was. But there were 2 separate episodes. I think it was it was Emohawk, and then what was the one with the simulant? I can't even remember what that was called off the top of my head. And I think they did the 2. It was 2 individual ones, but the 2 of them were linked because they were still trying to get the drive to make sure the ship went. Because the first one, it was they tried to get something from the simulant ship, or there was some link. I can't remember what it was. It wasn't in the drive because they nicked that from the Guelph, and then they had to. They wanted something from the simulant, but they pretended to be Guelph, and then the simulant nicked Crichton's heads, and then it was all round that way. But there was a link between 2, and that was the only 2-parter prior to this one. That's what I was getting at. Roundabout road to actually talk a load of rubbish. Gunman of the Apocalypse and Rimmerworld were linked. But did they actually do it as they tell you what happened the time before? Sudoku, I can't remember that one. I can remember them being linked, but I don't think they did previously. That happened. But in one of the episodes, they did do that. And it's really annoying when that happens, isn't it? You remember it, but you forget the names. Maybe for next time. Anywho, Ian Masters was good, wasn't he? Birdman.
Yes.
The Birdman of the
obviously the Birdman of Alcatraz. Yeah.
I thought he was actually. He just seemed. He played the wee crazy guy. Pete's never did that before. He's died. He's never died and come back to life before. It's just. I just thought there was a lot of good bits in this. Like, for instance, the Birdman's, the way he acted in his wee bird, Pete, and the idea of the T-Rex, but being messed up with the idea of the time wand. They needed the time wand to get the T-Rex. However, there's aspects that didn't work. Again, like their clothes. Remember when changed the two of them into the kids?
Yeah.
Then they changed them back. But their hair was set to a different time period. Well, I can never imagine Kat having a hair like that.
No.
At all. Ever. So
this is true.
They're implying that that was set to the 60s. And then when they changed the clothes back to a different time period. So they're saying that the clothes get changed back to the 60s as well. Or a time when the cat dressed like that, which I can't imagine the cat dressing like that at all.
No.
So it's wee bits like that. It's the same idea. That's the wee stupid things I noticed.
It was a bit forced, yeah. It was forced. Yeah. It didn't work. It did not work for the character of Kat at all.
Yeah. Do you know what I would have liked to have seen? Another callback. The Time Wand hitting Lister with it. And the same old boy played him when the Inquisitor came on. Remember?
Oh, yes.
Set them back and then set them forward. I would have liked the same old boy who played Lister to play him again as an old man again. That would have been a nice callback because they did that in the with it was Lister made him a kid, then made him an old man. This one they made Kachansky and Kat kids. I would have liked it when they did that. They would have maybe actually changed Lister into the old man again. It would have been a nice wee callback. Even though I'm constantly saying that they keep referring back to things that were happening. But
yeah, that could have worked.
Yeah, there you go. Sadako's got it. Ticket to Ride in Nanarchy had a link and they had a recap of what happened the time before. And it was because of the Hollyhock, the paddles, and then going on to finding Red Dwarf. I knew it was a recap and I just couldn't remember why, and that's what it was. And it was, they wanted that done. But
that's right.
With the two-parters here, it just seemed they were dragging the two-parters in.
And it just sort of, again, the whole sort of story scene dragged out. I said it could have been done in one. And I think there were those scenes in part two, in Hollister's office, and he keeps going over, do you know what happens to a Adonis? And again, overplayed and dragged out.
It basically used the same lines for burping, the same lines for it being sick, the same lines for it crapping, the same line, and it's literally it's the 4 times they used that same part, and it was just it just went a wee bit too much, as you said. And even the bit with in the second one, the Archie plot and the period plot. In the middle of all that, you've got Archie, his penis, because he created one just so he could be redesignated as a man, because he didn't want to be designated as a woman. But even before that, buying the calendar for Kachansky because she says it's the wrong time of the month and he got a new calendar. I thought that was a clever way of sort of bringing that in. But then again, with the getting him back, to me, the fact that he says he lied to me, I think he would have actually it would have been better if he turned around and says, he's just got me back, didn't he?
Yeah.
That would have been better rather than him saying, he just lied to me, as if it's unusual him lying to me. To me, him turning around and saying, he just got me back for that prank I played him would have been a funnier line, because then you're playing back to the fact they created TV stuff, whereas you're standing there, try it on, you're going to unwrap it, and I'm sitting there thinking, that's funny to an extent.
Again, another dragged out scenario, overplayed.
Yes, I think it was.
Yes, we get it. It's okay.
And I think initially the initial part where he's standing, it's that part, and then it just sort of, we get it.
Yeah, that's
for males. A lot of males, it might be uncomfortable for that scene, but that's only it's not. because people are married, have got kids. Believe it or not, know about these things. It's not just females. I know things like that. Having 3 older sisters and 3 daughters, I bloody learned too much about the females. That's why I went bald.
Yeah, but again, it's another example of the overplayed joke. And like earlier series were much snappier, sharper.
Yeah, I think
This
that's
series again. It just seems again lost its way, and it's got like, oh, we've got something that could be funny here. Let's sort of.
But did you not also
it out and kill it?
Did you not also think that they went from smart jokes? Remember, I said earlier that I thought the jokes seemed to be a bit more farcical, a bit more dumbed out.
Yes.
I think they've gone that. It's almost a case of they're stereotypically farcical, as in, oh, isn't this funny? It's a man saying it to a woman, as if all guys would find this hilarious. No, it's funny initially because it's that, but if you keep going at it, it stops being funny. It doesn't matter if you're male or female; it's just not funny after a while. Time.
Yeah,
it's almost like every guy would actually find this hilarious because they can't imagine themselves in that position. Well, true, but it stops being funny because once you've got over the initial humour, then it's just dragged out. And I found that part a wee bit unfortunate again. A good joke dragged to the point where you stop laughing when the joke's still going on. And I think it's almost like somebody said, we'll do this because males will laugh at this. We'll do this because the females will laugh at this. We'll do this because it's even like when I think it's Only the Good. Tony Slattery plays the dispensing machine. But they mentioned the dispensing machine at the beginning when the doctor asks about is Red Dwarf reset to its factory settings before GMC made all the cuts. He says that's confidential. He says it was a dispensing machine. He says I'm going to have that busted down to a tampon dispenser.
Yeah, that was funny.
That's what I'm saying. So there's a joke along the similar lines, which was funny. Then you go to the bit with the period. Congratulations on your period. Similar type of joke, but they dragged it. It's almost like they did it at one point, and then there's a similar joke that they drag out. It's almost like inconsistencies, and I think they've done that quite a lot. You've got a joke which is really hits the point, and then a similar joke later on, which drags, and that's the parts that I thought unfortunate. It's almost like 2 different people are writing the scripts.
That's exactly how it feels.
Yep.
Yep.
And one of them should have actually made a rimmer-shaped blur. And there was what was it? They mentioned Boeing, and I'm trying to remember what that was. They did mention Boeing. There was a reference to Boeing. The only reason I picked up is because a Judge Dredd comic book strip had Boeing, and that was a spray-on bubble that you could jump, and it would bounce, and it was called Boeing because it would bounce. So you could jump off a high. I mean, it would absorb all the stuff, but it would. Basically, yes. But so you were enclosed in it, and it would bounce you around the city. And it wouldn't cause you any damage, and you had to get cut out of it. But as soon as I heard it, and for some reason it stuck in my brain, but the content of it within here, I can't even remember. It's one of those ones that I was enjoying, Pete, that I forgot to write it down. Weird. It was one of the first, I think it was in the first episode they mentioned it, and I wish I had actually remembered what it was about, because I remember laughing at it. But because I remembered Boeing from the thing there, it was almost one of those ones that just skipped right past me. I remember laughing at it. Darn. But what else was there in the Pete? The cow vindaloo.
Oh, yeah. There was a little bit too much of description of what happened afterward there. It was like, damn.
You know, the one thing I just thought it was Craig Charles, so it was a Lister comment, and I thought that one worked, that one didn't. Remember, he says, well, if Pete doesn't eat it, I will. It'll do me, right? So he's making the thing with that there's this big vat of curry, a vindaloo, and if the Pete doesn't eat it, I will. So I thought that was quite good because he loves curry, so he's quite happy. Doesn't matter if it's got a full cow in it, I'll give it a go. But it was the next part when they're putting bran in it. And he's saying, don't do that, you'll ruin the taste. And I thought, their idea is to make it crap. So they're giving it a curry, they're making it super hot, they're putting everything in it, roughage. So then they're putting bran in it. He's saying, don't put it in, it'll ruin the taste. And I'm sitting there thinking,
yeah, but that's defeating the purpose.
That was the point of the whole thing. And it wasn't a case of he did not know that. And I thought, no, that joke didn't land because it was a typical Rimmer joke, but it didn't land because it was the context just didn't work for it. Because they were the ones that were doing it deliberately to make the Pete go. And then he said, no, you'll ruin the taste. It was a typical Lister joke, but it was the context just took it out of the funny. It just made it silly. So it's almost like somebody says, Lister would say this, but he probably wouldn't say it when he's the one that's actually organising it. Because you can guarantee none of the rest of them were the ones that actually knew how to make the vindaloo. So he would be the one that's organising it, and then he's complaining that they're putting other stuff in to make the...
Yeah, it just didn't make sense.
It didn't make sense.
It's like they threw it in there thinking, oh, this is a good Lister line, but completely forgetting that the whole thread of that
was to do that.
The whole purpose was, to give it all this roughage.
Yeah.
The description, though, was funny. I mean, you know it's coming. You know the description's going to be coming. You know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I think they dragged that out a little bit too far as well.
Yes. I think it's the same idea. That's the one there.
I think they could have pulled off the suggestion of what happened afterwards with some good old-fashioned sound effects.
Yes.
And the reactions of the characters. And then like one quick gross moment and then move on, you know. But it was like the scene in Hollister's office where he kept going and going and going and going, talking about it. It was just like, okay.
Yeah. It is. And see that one there as well. See the part you've put down there, Captain Hollister, 7 hours. Do you know how long that is? I couldn't move my shot till after midnight. And I wanted to leave it there. And I'm sitting there thinking, and the silly thing is, I'm sitting there thinking, was that a guy that wrote that, or was that a woman that wrote that? Because it's the same as the period joke. To me, that was a guy that wrote it because of the way it was written. Whereas this part, I thought it was a woman that wrote it. Because although the jokes for the happy period and stuff like that, I thought it was a guy writing it because what would be the most embarrassing for a male to say to a female at a period? Which
worked, really. I mean...
It worked, but it just a wee bit too long. But so that's why I thought it was a male who wrote that. Whereas this one, I thought that, I don't know if that is a male point of view. Because believe it or not, these things happen. And yeah, you can still take your shorts off.
But I think it was sort of an attempt at that same sort of sort of like locker room humor.
Yes.
You know.
But I thought it was the same idea. Like, for instance, he could have stopped. Do you know how long that is? That would be fine. the
Again,
parts of the scripting of it, I thought it just went too much because
yeah, it goes on. It goes on too far.
To me, that's what I'm saying is like the parts with the period jokes, like you want to try it on. I thought it went a wee bit too long. In this one, I thought it went a wee bit too long. It's almost like it was stereotypical. If a guy's got one of those, he can't take his trousers off and he can't actually. And I was sitting there thinking, is that set to make certain people laugh because they don't understand? Or is it written by somebody that Disney understand? Or is it just written, oh, here's funny things that somebody might say? And that's why I thought it went too long. The 7 hours, do you know how long that is? It's turning around again. I couldn't go outside because I had a tent. I could understand those type of ones because you saw the guys crouching around, which was hilariously funny. That
was hilariously funny, I have to admit. That was funny.
But that's what I'm saying. So having all that, you could have said something. Do you know how long that is? I had to work. I couldn't even leave my office to do my work. It would have just been funny. I just thought those parts sort of.
I think just 7 hours to know how long that is would have worked. Like you said, I think they could have done without the rest of it because his delivery was funny enough.
Yeah.
And the suggestion was there.
And it's the same idea. It was the same as the rat. It's the same as other aspects. They could stop at a certain point and it would be funny. But then they sort of...
I guess it's the theme of this whole season, the sort of over-egging in certain areas where they could have done without that.
Yeah.
Is it a lack of understanding, really, of where, you had one seasoned writer who really understands the characters
and
how to write jokes for them, and then one writer who doesn't have the same experience of the characters,
and they may have been brought in, as you said, to make it more appealing to American audiences. And think
which is, as we said earlier, which isn't really necessary sometimes because they assume that American audiences are going to be, more simplistic. But there's that in everywhere you go. There's intelligent viewers, and then there's sort of simpleton viewers. But and I think that's why British comedies did so well and was so popular in the US, because those of us who discovered them through things like PBS and films and things like that, really were drawn to them for that reason.
I'll give an example. I'll give an example of one of the better ones. Right, UK. Seen that one? Stephen Moffat one. Coupling.
I've heard about that and I've never seen it.
I saw a couple of them.
I've seen the first 3 seasons. The first 3 seasons are superb. I think Stephen Moffat wrote with his wife. So it's about 3 males, 3 females. Thingy Alexander. She played the princess in last season. In the night, remember the night she plays, and she's the main female. So there's 3 females, 3 males. So you got one guy, Steve, and you've got one girl. So you've got Jane. Oh, I can't remember the 3, but so she's the normal female, and Steve is the normal guy. The guys have got the pervert, which is Jeff, and the God's gift to women, which is Patrick. So, and then in the females, you've got the neurotic one, and I can't even remember her name either. And then you've got the wacky, crazy one, which is Jane. So there's 3 males, 3 females, and there's a similar dynamics. So you've got the normal one in both extremes of the type. So the males is the pervert and the God's gift. The women, it's the neurotic and the crazy. Right, so you've got the 6 of them, and the first 3 seasons are superb, but they're very detrimental. It's typical British humour. They have a joke at their own expense.
Yeah,
took over to the States. 6 episodes in each of the first 3 seasons. Into the States, what did they do? 1 season, 22 episodes. And they changed it because they thought, well, the Americans, their humour isn't self-deprecating. It's more self-grandising and having a go at other people rather than themselves. So they changed it. The jokes were all there, but they weren't funny because they changed it enough that just did not work. I've got the US one as well as the UK one. The US one is dire. They kept the jokes, but the delivery of them were just so different. If you look at Jeff in the US one compared to Jeff in the UK one, Richard Cole played Jeff. Fantastic. He's the funniest one in that. If you ever get a chance, watch the first 3 seasons. Coupling.
That's definitely one we'll have to catch up with. I've definitely never seen that.
Season 4, Richard Cole left, and it's not as good. They had a new guy, Oliver, come in, and it's just not as good. It's okay, but that's the best I could say. But it's Sarah Alexander. I think that was her. She played the queen or the princess. Remember in the one with the knights?
Yeah, she's the one that's also in Jonathan Creek's final season where he marries her. I think it's the same actress.
It is.
Is that the one that actually she married? I'm trying to think. I've got Jonathan Creek sitting there and I can't remember that one. Because it was he had Sheridan Smith in with him, I remember, in Jonathan Creek.
Yeah, she had a turn with him as well, yeah.
But I can't remember Sarah Alexander. I must admit, I'll need to dig them out again. They're sitting right there.
Yeah, she's sort of in the final, I don't know how many episodes she's in, but she's prominent in the thumbnail for that final season because he's married then, and it's sort of like, I personally don't think it works for his character as well, but I understand the progression of his character through the seasons.
There's the thumbnails there, and it's basically Madeline. So you've got Maddie. The first 3 are Maddie. 4th one is Sheridan Smith, and the 5th one it's just him on his own.
I wonder if it's a special then, because in the BritBox, if you look on BritBox, it shows the thumbnails, and it definitely shows her with Jonathan as very cozy.
It was the last season.
Yeah, I seem to recall he had a wife in the last season, didn't he?
I thought the one that had
that.
I thought the one that had the wife was the Adrian Edmund character, and his wife was Nawala, and she played his assistant. Oh, wait a minute, you're right. I don't know who it is, but because she wanted him to stop being a investigator.
Yeah.
I do have yes, I think he was married, and it might have been her. But Sarah Alexander, anyway, she is in that coupling. And the guy played in with Pirates of the Caribbean. He played the Commodore.
Mackenzie Crook.
No. The younger guy. What's his name?
No, I'm thinking of The Office, I am.
Oh, I can't even remember his name, but it's one of those things. It's Steve something or other. Him there. That's the 2 of them there.
Okay, yeah, that's definitely her. That's definitely that actress that was in.
He's the guy in Pirates of the Caribbean. He plays the ship's captain. Is hunting for Johnny Depp.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I keep on thinking.
I didn't recognize him in that pic.
Well, that's basically that they're in coupling. They're the 2 normal, and then you've got Richard Cole and stuff like that. It is fantastic. First 3 seasons, definitely the way to go. Have a look at that, but definitely don't. If you have a look at the US version, you might find that somewhere, even on YouTube. but it is nowhere near as funny. And it's
Yeah.
typical Americans. They, instead of just doing a pilot and realise that they actually did the full season, and Stephen Moffat went over to help, and it did not work because they changed the humour, because being very self-deprecating, they didn't do that in the US one, and it just did not work.
Yeah, but again, leave it be and make something completely from scratch, that does appeal to whatever audience that you're writing it for. Don't take one that's going to work for a particular audience in a particular part of the world and then try and, remold it and change it and bastardize it for another audience, because you don't want to take the time to create something new. You just want to try and capitalize on popularity without,
it's like turning around and saying, right, you like Red Dwarf, so we're going to take Red Dwarf and completely change it. Well, actually, it's Red Dwarf I like, so why would you change it?
Yeah.
Right, well, we're going to put it into a new market because there's people who like Red Dwarf, so we're going to take it and change it. So you're bringing it in because people like it, but you're going to change it.
Mm-hmm.
If you're bringing it in because you think people will like it, but you want to customize it to that market, I can understand. It worked with The Office. It's worked with a couple of things. Some things
it worked.
You're changing. If you change the press, if you keep the premise, but you get somebody to rewrite it for the market, I can understand, because some folks wouldn't work over here. It's like the Red Dwarf. I don't know if Windolene or Tesco or Big in the US. I would assume not.
No, I'd never heard of them.
Right, so Windolene, when the joke was about Windolene and Swarfiga, I understood it. Because he says, I drank that pink stuff at the back. He says, you drank my Windolene. And I'm sitting there thinking, I understood that. No problem, because Windolene is a liquid you use for cleaning windows.
Windex.
Windex is in the States. So if you heard Windolene and you take the States, what's Windolene? Is that a drink?
Yeah, well, that's it. I wouldn't have known what that was.
And it's the same as Swarfiga. Swarfiga's quite a normal name. I've worked in building sites, so I knew what Swarfiga is. But if you just don't know what it is, it means nothing.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things. It's like when you see in America, they say something and you're saying, I wonder if that's like, and you try and, based on the name, you try and
a correlation
to see if it's thing, because otherwise it's like somebody was telling us, what was the joke? I think it was a Jasper Carrot one. He says when he went to Australia, he says things changed. He says because over there you had to go and get a roll of Durex sellotape.
Never.
Yeah. Oh dear.
I'm sitting there thinking,
you want a whole roll?
Exactly. Can I not just buy one?
That's so party, man.
You're sitting there thinking, he's went in and just bought a whole roll of Durex. And that's what he says when he first went over, and he says he was standing there, somebody just walked in and asked for a big roll of Durex. And he says it's just because we call it sellotape here. It's just the brand name over there. So I can understand. But you imagine that type of thing. If you don't know the brand, it could mean something completely different.
Yeah, it could have a totally different.
Well, you look at the difference between a bum bag. We call it a bum bag. The US call it a fanny pack.
Yeah, and I found out what that means when I came over here. I was like, okay. Won't be calling it a fanny pack anymore.
Exactly. But it's that thing. So in the States, they're quite happy. Just go there and sit in your fanny. Whereas we're all going, what did you say?
And yet, bum, we would know what a bum was. We would know what a bum was. But we'd never heard of that use of that word of fanny over in the States. It wouldn't have anything to do with that.
It's just
what it means here.
It's the same as I remember it was a program that was classed as family friendly. Believe it or not, Phil Collins was in it. I'm trying to think.
Really?
Actually, it might have actually been Miami Vice, an old version of Miami Vice.
Right, that's very possible. Yeah, he was in one of those, I think.
And you remember he's talked to him and he's going, "Oh, they're just a bunch of wankers." And we're all sitting there going,
"Really?
Did you hear what he just said?" Yeah, in the States, it's not classed as rude a word. It's the same as Married with Children. Because you know Married with Children, right?
Yep.
Peggy Bundy, her maiden name. Do you know what her maiden name is?
No. What is it?
Peggy Wanker. They come from Wanker
No
County.
way. I cannot remember that.
Oh, good God.
They come from Wanker County. Basically, you had King Kong Bundy who
somebody
played
was having a bit of a joke, though.
Yeah, King Kong Bundy played her cousin Errol. That's why they were called the Bundys, basically, because people thought it was after the mass murderer, Ted Bundy.
That's right, yeah.
It was called after the wrestler King Kong Bundy, who appeared in 2 of the episodes as Peggy's cousin. So he was. But it was Peggy Wanker.
That's right. I can't remember that. I can remember that being on, and I remember watching it now and then.
I was a big Married with Children fan. I actually always wanted to grow up to be Al, just sit there in front of the telly, hands down my pants, and just sit and watch it. Knew my stomach won't let me put my hand down my pants, but I sit and watch the telly.
Was it a bit like was it a bit Royal Family in that regard, where Al Bundy was sort of like the patriarchal figure sat in the chair, but I can see where it's not in other ways, because I love
completely opposite. Al was the breadwinner, the put upon breadwinner.
Yes, that's true. It's been a long time since I've seen it.
Peggy was the homebody. I would say she ruled the roost. And then you had Kelly and Buck.
Yeah, the daughter and the son. It's been absolute ages since I've seen it.
You also had Buck, which was the Doug. But Christine Applegate. I used to love it. I grew up watching it, and I watch it. I think the last time I watched it was about 4 months ago. All 11 seasons. It
was funny.
I watched it all the way through.
It was funny when I saw it.
Yeah, I mean, some of my sayings, my wife keeps on shouting at me because she'll say, "Do you miss me?" I say, with every shot. And it's basically an Al Bundy. "Do you miss me, honey?" Aye, with every shot, Peg. My wife just looks at me as if to say, "Huh?" But sorry, it's just because if somebody says, "You miss me," with every shot, I just say it automatically because I used to watch it all the time. And it's just one of those things I say. But it's the same idea. I can't even remember why we went on to that.
No, me.
We were talking about branding.
Old age is great, isn't it?
We were talking about branding. That's what it was. Yes, old age is great. I'm going to go up and get a wee trim down at the weekend. My mother and father-in-law's 50th anniversary, so we're going to go out for something to eat on Saturday before, and I'm going to get this trim down to make it look as if I'm keep it long but tidy it up.
Yeah, I was going to say don't get too crazy there.
Because if I do it myself, it'll literally be. I need to get this cut as well. Well, know that, but obviously just decide. I used to laugh when my dad would go in and say a short back and sides. Now I realise that that's all I can get cut. Back and sides. But old age. Anyway, we're talking about branding. That's where we went with different namings for different things. So the Windowline and the Tesco cupcake. So if that was in the States, Tesco means nothing. If it said cupcake, it would have people would go, so the GMC actually still have a Walmart or a whatever, whereas we say Tesco. Really, it's a wee bit weird. However, Pete. What did you think of Pete, all in all, for the two-parter?
Marginally above average. As I said, would have been better as one. Not terrible, but just not brilliant. Didn't quite hit the mark.
See, I think the same. I think if it was a single episode in all the good parts, obviously need to actually highlight that part. If all the good parts were still in it, like for instance, Archie coming out of Cat's outfit, that was very alien. Sorry, that's Archie. That's his penis. Sorry, my ears are not quite picking that up. What did you say?
That was so bizarre that it was funny.
It just
was actually so bizarre that it was funny.
It just came out of nowhere. You're sitting there thinking they had the Archie joke with the putting the bin on it and it's away, and then suddenly the cat's giving it all this.
And that was a throwback to Alien, because the little alien that sort of ran off the table.
Yeah, exactly. And I was just knocking myself at it. So if they could keep all the funny bits like that within Pete, the Archie, the Rimmer as a shape blur, and Birdman, and even the bits with Pete and stuff like that, and take out all the extraneous ones, like with Hollister explaining the same thing 4 times just to get a different punchline each time, I think it would have actually been one of the better ones. I think it would have actually beat Cassandra. But because they split up, it's the same idea. They've just dragged it out. So a good story just extended just to fill in the niche.
A bit too long, yeah.
Which is unfortunate, because a good story, it's the same as even, I don't think Crikey TV you could actually say, but Cassandra and Pete and even Only the Good, they had good sci-fi tropes in there.
Mm-hmm.
They just didn't execute them the best. Like, for instance, the Time Wand. You have to destroy it because, then why not just put it away somewhere and don't use it?
Yeah, I thought that was a bit obvious. It was like, okay, they're going to destroy it. And then, of course, 5 seconds later, they're going to need it.
Yeah. It's the same idea as they've had the Hollyhock, they've had so they've had the Way of Hollyhock, they've had the paddle, which they could travel 200-300 light years. They've had the dimension. They've had the time drive. Which the first time they could travel in time. Second time they could travel in time and space. So why didn't you just go back to Earth? Yeah. But they just ignore them. So why don't they just actually not smash it and just ignore it? I assume it's the same place with the paddles and the time drive and the Hollyhock drive and all the other things that they just go whoop, ignore, because it would end the show too quickly.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the fact is they deliberately, we're not going to need it now, which you knew was going to happen. That was a silly thing. You knew it was going to happen.
Yeah, it's like it's the wacky technology of the week. Gag, get a few gags out of it, and then forget about it, and on to the next.
Yeah, and it's even the Only the Good, the final episode. I think they did the same idea. They made a few mistakes for something that could have been a good episode. There was good parts in it. There was forgettable parts in it. But I think the biggest mistake they did was they ruined how to bring it all together.
Yeah, this one annoyed me, but especially the ending of it. It just really annoyed me, and it just felt really broken up. Yeah.
There was some good bits in it, like, for instance, Tony Slattery's the dispensing machine getting his own back. And
that was great, yeah.
Thief! Someone's stealing it! Because
yeah.
I just thought that was good because that's a callback again because Tony Slattery's played the machines in the past. And the good thing and a bad thing for me was the sister. You remember?
Yeah. That was dumb. What was that about?
Extremely dumb. Because they're implying she was the one who came from the other ship that brought the virus.
Yeah.
Right? But because she walks into Hollister, not the Rimmer side before the mirror. She walks into Hollister and says, "Oh, you've been made captain." So there you go. She's never been on that ship. So she doesn't know who the captain is. So she's not from this ship. So it's implying she was a sole survivor from the other ship that brought the virus that starts eating the Red Dwarf, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So he says, so the nanobots resurrected you? They were instructed, as Holly said, to resurrect Red Dwarf and her crew. Why would they go away and just start resurrecting other people? Because and if they did resurrect that ship and the people in it, why did they resurrect the virus? It would just eat the ship. It just made zero sense.
Yeah.
It would be better if they did like they did with the polymorph. They came across the ship floating, like they've done in Red Dwarf numerous times. They came across a escape pod. The polymorph, the two inside, do not open, do not approach. They've found the ones with like Carmen, whatever her name was. Remember the Epideme? So they found ships with that. So it just made no sense that the nanobots have resurrected somebody else in a different ship. It just made no sense. However, Rimmer going through and thinking it's his girlfriend and tries to snog, I'm your sister, which, who was it? Is it the drinker says it's the way they deliver it. There's one of the YouTube channels talks about the way they deliver it, because it's not I'm your sister, I'm a sister.
Yeah.
So saying I'm your sister, then him coming up going, oh, hello, sis, come and get.
But why would she be so upset by that? I mean, I could see her being upset by him grabbing her, but then why did she even offer to kiss him if she was supposedly his sister or a sister? What was that for?
Exactly.
Why would a sister offer that and then be completely horrified by the fact that he kissed her? I couldn't quite get my head around that.
Well, another poorly executed over.
Well, I think there you go. Here's something funny. How do we get to it? But it was the same idea. Yes, she could lean in and give him a kiss in the cheek, friends. Not an issue. Rimmer's just went over the top with it, and she gets shocked because why would you do that? That's the friend saying. Then he wakes up, hello, sister. I'm not your sister. I'm sister so-and-so. And it was a case of, well, why did you say I'm your sister? You didn't say I'm your sister.
But not only that, she was like horrified by him grabbing her nose and trying to, muddle through. And because now he thinks he has to treat her like his actual sister. But before that, doesn't she actually say to him, can I kiss you or something? And I was like, why the hell would she say that?
But see, I can understand friends just give a wee kiss in the cheek, but because he's in bed ill.
But in other words, her character was supposed to be a sister, which was a big joke. So why would she? It was like how they set that scene up didn't make sense to me.
Yeah, it's just, I think it was a case of they went a wee bit too far as well, because they set up the scene and then when he snogged her, what did they say? Or she say? She didn't say, I'm a holy sister. It's not, I'm your sister. Well, why would you say I'm your sister?
It just didn't work. Yeah, it was just weird.
And the fact that, why did they bring her in at all? Because Hollister, when they first thing, Hollister hadn't seen her, hence the reason the joke about, will I turn your wife's photo? What would you like? A tea, a coffee, a packet of 3? Those were funny jokes if you assumed that she was the girlfriend, because he said he hadn't seen her in such a long time and she was very friendly, but it didn't imply anything other than they were friends.
Mm-hmm.
But Rimmer typically, will I turn your wife's picture to the wall and the tea, coffee, packet of 3? And even that, a packet of 3, unless you know what that's referring to, that means nothing.
Yeah.
Because, in the UK, a packet of 3 is well-known expression for certain rubber contents.
Yes.
But in the States,
they wouldn't have known what that was.
Exactly. So it's what I'm saying. It seemed inconsistent. So you've got jokes that are very typically British, and then you've got jokes that would they work unless you knew what it meant?
Yeah. Yeah, it was clumsy. It was just extremely clumsy.
Yeah. There you go. There's Sadako again. When a show's going great, it all feels as if it was destiny. And up to Red Dwarf 5 and 6 it did. Series 7 it felt like the destiny was off. It's true. Basically, it's almost
Totally
like
agree.
somebody's got the good part, somebody's got half a script and they're putting it together. It's like having half a jigsaw and a piece of cardboard and bits of paper, and you're just cutting out and trying to fit it in. But I think only the good. There was some good bits in it. Not denying it. There were some good bits in it. Like Danny John-Jules, Mr. Man, who's known for forgetting his lines.
Yes, I was just reading about that.
He was the only one who could actually say, right, let's see if I can get this. I've written it down, and I know I'm going to get it wrong. Say some Fancolithic, Mixie, Alba-Durum, Rixie, Dixie, Doxy, Dexy, Doroxide. Sorry, I got it wrong there. But I can't even say it, and it's right in front of me. He remembered we could see it, but he was the only one that could actually see it.
Yeah, that was funny, yeah.
And he got it.
And he nailed it. It was really good. It was a bit like
Braxacoratorium. Yes, the Slovene.
Braxacoracophallopatorius. It's a bit like that one.
Yeah.
It's one of those ones that you know and you don't.
But I've got Oregon flan by a Pulthquin Giggle Drubslant Cilio go.
Ah, yes.
That's the one.
And I didn't get that right.
And the problem thing is, see if you end a big long word with go, people actually think they know what you just said. I know that place. At one point, I used to actually I didn't know how to actually say that, but no, I've not. It's not something I've thought of in years and even try to remember it. But yeah, it's one of those phrases that he could remember it. So even the other ones like Crichton, because you knew like Crichton in the past, Robert Llewellyn had cheat cards and Chris Barry had cheat cards if they were having to say, especially Robert Llewellyn, if he had to say something quite long, they would have the cheat cards so he could remember and read it because it was too much to remember. Whereas John-Jules said that off the cuff and he didn't look as if he was actually struggling with it at all.
Yeah, that was pretty impressive, especially, like you said, because he was so notorious for forgetting his lines on set.
He did that very well.
Yeah. But even the fact is, it wouldn't have been into the mirror universe. It's the same idea we were saying about the icon. There was no Lister there.
Yeah.
There was no even
very conspicuous.
There was no Lister, but there was also no Rimmer. And yes, I suppose we could assume when he went through to one, the other one came through to his. But there's nothing implying that because they said the machine was down, so there was no Lister there. Sorry, no Rimmer there. So obviously the Rimmer from that world didn't come across.
Yeah, I was totally confused by the end of that. I was just like...
So where was the other Rimmer?
Yeah.
And where was the Lister? But also, when he went back through with the antidote, which turned out to be the actual disease, and he had said that they'd gone back through. So they'd gone through, but they didn't wait there for him because they knew he would have been coming back to the mirror. So he's walked into his room, through the mirror, into thingy, and then it melted down and he couldn't get back through. However, the vending machine said to him that they'd already gone through. So they go through, and then what? Because we already know there's another cat there and there's another Kachansky there. Because we've seen them.
Yeah, it just seemed completely pointless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I just couldn't believe this was the final episode. I just couldn't believe it.
It just seemed disjointed at the best.
Yeah.
And I know fine well they had other plans, because the final episode was not meant to be only the good, it was meant to be Earth. They were meant to get back to Earth. And by accident, Hollister somehow destroys famous Earth landmarks.
Okay.
And considering they're 3 million years in the future, if they're still destroying landmarks that are standing 3 million years, it would either be landmarks that have had to be rebuilt multiple times, because what is going to last 3 million years? Or what else is it going to be? So they're going to destroy the Eiffel Tower, Big Ben, the, what you call them, the mountains, the Mount Rushmore.
Okay, yeah.
And the Taj Mahal. Things that you, from anywhere in the world, if somebody mentions one of these things, you know what it is.
Hanging Gardens of Babylon. Sydney Opera House.
But there you go. Sydney Opera House or something. So if it has to be something that a large enough audience would recognise as major landmarks. So they couldn't pick just things that London Eye, because people outside Britain might not know what that is, or like Glasgow University, because people outside Scotland might not know what that is. That type of thing. They would have to be big landmarks. So I would say things like Mount Rushmore, maybe
Empire State Building,
that type of thing, or Empire State Building's already been attacked by King Kong. You need to leave that one out.
True, yeah.
But the Statue of Liberty, there you go. The Eiffel Tower, even Big Ben, the Sydney Opera House.
According to Stephen Moffat, the Statue of Liberty is an angel now, but never mind.
That
didn't make any sense, but there we go.
It made sense because you could hear it. So they're saying that people heard a bang, 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 and nobody goes, "What's that?" Oh, look, there's the Statue of Liberty over there, and it's no, sorry, it might have been a nice visual gag, but it made zero sense.
Yeah.
So, that's another thing.
He went a bit Ghostbusters there. He was going for the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man.
Well, that's exactly what he was going for. And, because in the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man, what they actually animate? They animated the Statue of Liberty. That's what he was going for. And it just did not work.
No.
But here's a question I thought of, right? We know Lister was in stasis for 3 million years.
Yep.
But how far? This is just let's really go for this one. How far would the ship have actually drifted into space in 3 million years in terms of distance? Just a thought.
Well, remember they did sort of say that they managed to break the light barrier for, even if it's only once and it was short. So say for instance they did it for 24 hours. That's quite a long time, because I think they actually it says it takes 8 hours to turn around and slow down and all that. So even if you say, well, even give them a week, right, for that. So they're traveling at light speed. So how far could they travel in 1 week in light speed? Because they're traveling at 600,000 miles per second at that speed. Something like that, 627,000 miles per second, I think.
Yeah, and you have to learn relativity and all that.
Yeah. So even at that, so they're I would say a couple of hundred light years away, and they'd been traveling for 3 million years, even if they were going at half the speed of light. And because they were accordingly accelerating. So even if they started off slow, over 3 million years, they managed to reach light speed. So even if they were going even a fifth of the speed of light on average across it, you're still talking about, that's still a hell of a lot. You're talking about between galaxies. Because the closest galaxy is, 30 light years away? They've been travelling 3 million years, and even if they were a fraction of the light speed.
100 million, I think, the Andromeda Galaxy, I'm thinking.
Is it light years? I thought it was like 100,000, I thought it was.
The Decos put something in the
Yes,
chat as well.
you're right.
Well, if we want the facts, we basically they went to Speed and Future Echoes. They took a lot off the journey home, hence why they to come across the derelict ships, which is true because I always thought that they had a bit, so they had to be heading back the way after Lightspeed, after Future Echoes, because they came across more and more ships. But considering the speed they were meant to be traveling, it's even if they actually, but they still say they're in deep space, 3 million years from home, right? So they're still, even if they're between galaxies. Apart from anything else, Holly couldn't actually navigate because remember he said that.
Yes.
I always got this sense they never left their galaxy, but they keep on saying deep space. And usually when they refer to deep space, they don't usually refer to parts of the galaxy. That's the way I understood it when they're talking about they're in deep space, as in the space between the galaxies, because there's nothing there.
Mm.
Because if they're just out in part of the galaxy, then there's reference points. That's the way I understood it. But then again, I know I could be wrong, because we're trying to read into it what they actually see on screen.
Yes.
They don't give you a lot of information, so it's all speculation, isn't it?
That's it. Just one of those little things that come to mind.
Aye. But it's something to actually think about. I would love somebody to actually work out how long it took them, how the speed they were traveling, and how far they moved, and where they were in comparison to where, because they did say like if they actually could travel between, if you let they said, I'm sure they said it would take something like 100,000 years to travel between this galaxy and the next one at the speeds we could go just now. That's the way I remember something somewhere. They were just one of these references if people were trying to reach the different I think they were talking about signals from Earth. And they said it would take 100,000 years to reach the next galaxy, or the next habitable, or the next sun, or something like that. But
yeah.
The galaxy, our galaxy, they can't even actually calculate it. They can only just take a guesstimate at it and how many other galaxies are in the Milky Way. But it's one of those things. We don't know.
Well, Douglas Adams once said, "Space is big, really big.
Aye.
You won't believe how vastly, etc."
Yeah, it's like the porridge one with the orange, the tangerine.
Oh yes, that was a good one.
That was a good one. So it's a way down there. So if you, where would the sun be?
In Johannesburg or something, wasn't it?
It was. And it just goes to show. Basically, it goes down that route, and I must admit.
And all the distractions so someone can nick a bicycle.
It just goes to show good things can actually lead you into other fun stuff. But only the good, disjointed, some good bits in it, some bad bits in it. But considering they were wanting to end up, that's where they blew their budget, they reckoned on Pete, that they didn't have the budget to actually do Earth, so they had to rewrite it, and it came up with only the good.
Yeah, there was a funny scene with Kat where Kat's the last one to end up in the infirmary, so he's trying to figure out a way to get himself beat up.
Yes,
but he inadvertently ends up
being
completely intimidating the biggest, baddest bully in the prison. Because he just has the nerve that no other person would ever have.
Yeah.
To muscle in on him when he's eating and just get up in his face and everything. And then the guy just goes, "Wow, if you actually did that, then you must really be bad."
Yeah, and I liked the fact when he stoated in as a nurse. And Lister looks up and goes, oh.
Yeah, that was good.
We're going to get out of here by 5. Why by 5? It says they're doing the bed bath in accordingly. I'm actually scheduled to do it.
I almost had a bit of a carry-on moment then when I saw him turn around with the nurse's costume on. And
yes, and the thing is, I thought the exact same. I thought it was the same colour. Because it was the guy from Randall and Hopkirk, deceased, the original, not the one with Reeves and Mortimer, the original guy from Randall and Hopkirk, deceased. He used to play Hopkirk, the ghost. Right, it was him who played the nurse. Try to sneak in, and I thought the outfit was a similar colour. I would need to because I've got the Carry On stuff there, so I'll need to watch that one just to confirm if it's the same outfit. It probably wouldn't, because
maybe that's what triggered it.
Blue. Yeah. It'd be more the blue outfit. It wouldn't be an orange one, but that's exactly what it reminded me of as well. The Carry On doctor scene. And it was the guy from Randall and Hopkirk. That's why I remember. But what's the marshmallow? Oh, that's right. That's right. From now on, marshmallow ass, you're my biatch.
That was a funny scene.
It was. Sadako's right. It was disappointing. I'm not a great fan of Reeves and Mortimer. I never liked the stuff, but because I loved Randall Hopkirk,
one positive though, Tom Baker was in it, so it's worth seeing for that.
Yeah, I've only watched one part of one of the episodes. I just couldn't get into it, but I might dig it out, see if I can find the bit with Tom Baker in it and watch that part. But I've never been a Reeves and Mortimer fan. I just find their humour funny. I like a lot of slapstick humour, and I think theirs is very Bottom-like humour. The frying pans and stuff like that. Whereas Bottom did it a whole lot better. Rick Mail and Ed Edmondson.
Oh, yeah.
The violence.
Legendary.
Oh, aye. Even the stupid things like with a cricket bat, missed both my legs. Or even the under Bottom where he's got his head in the fridge door going bang, bang, bang. Yeah. He's looking at the camera and smiling at it.
That had definitely sort of a Vivian feel to it as well. He always made me think of Vivian because he was so violent.
I always thought it.
They were both that way, though.
It's just older versions of the young ones' characters.
Yeah.
But the young ones' characters were more subdued from their Dangerous Brothers characters.
Yeah.
The Brothers. I think Dangerous Brothers. I know it wasn't even their first big hit, because Rick Mail's first big hit was Kevin Turvey. Kevin Tuvey. He was the reporter for it was one of the kids.
That's right.
But the Dangerous Brothers, I think it's one of was when the two of them really joined together and actually made it work, because the two of them had a very similar
physical comedy.
Yes, very the physical comedy just worked and so well together, and they could do it without even actually making it look as if it was difficult.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The Vivian, the Rick, the Dangerous Brothers, even the Filthy Rich and Cat Flap, and it's just Bottom was just the pinnacle of it.
Yeah.
But I must admit, I need to actually rewatch that again. I've got the best of the Dangerous Brothers, and I've got the full set of Bottom. So after I've finished, I just rewatched some stuff for Saturday, some old classics. I watched Logan's Run TV show, caught up on that.
Oh, so wow. Well done.
That was fun. And I've got to watch Zulu Dawn for tomorrow for the captain.
Ah, yes.
So it's going to be fun. And then after that, I don't know what I'm going to watch before Saturday's stream. But just basically, it'll be a no set thing. Just let's talk geeky old movies.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
It's
just go in, nothing set, no things. Just we'll go in and talk about what we like, what we've watched, and what each of us have liked, what we liked about it. That's the best way to do it.
And it's
Hopefully
a good because you can. Yeah.
So
that would be good.
So, guys, where have we been? We're at nearly 3 hours. And not bad considering it was definitely not one of the best seasons of Red Dwarf.
Well, especially because they just dropped that absolute pile of rubbish on us on the last episode, with with some exceptions, but it was like, okay, we were getting through it, we were accepting it to some extent, but then that final episode was definitely
and they were gearing all that up the end like Smegit is, because A, they thought it was finished, but B, they thought they were going to be doing a movie which never came. So they effectively thought the movie was the only thing that was coming. So this was the end of the series. And that was the way they ended it. And
but even so, why end it that way? Yeah.
And we had to wait 10 years. That's why they initially wanted to do Earth. So it finished with them getting back to Earth, even if they screwed it up with Hollisburg destroying landmarks and whatever else happening. They also was thinking about having Ace Rimmer come back to save Rimmer, because he's the last human Rimmer, because all the other Rimmers are all dead and holograms, and he's the last human one. And they dropped that for some reason as well.
That would have been excellent.
With that. Exactly. Because the fan service with the Dibblies, and then the fan service would have been with Ace, especially if they thought this was the end.
Oh, yeah, that would have been so perfect.
Yeah, Ace coming in to sacrifice himself to save the last living Rimmer.
Yep. Classic.
Yeah, exactly. It would have been better.
Yes, that's too bad.
They were going for a movie. So they thought the TV show was finished. Next thing was a movie, which never came. And then we had to wait 10 years for season 9 back to Earth.
That is hard. That is hard going.
Yeah, and after 10 years, what did we get? Back to Earth. And I always thought Back to Earth was the worst season. I might have to reevaluate it after rewatching that season. It just goes to show the last time I watched that season, I didn't think about it. It was just a case of switch on, just sit in the background, it's on, and it's Red Dwarf, it's great. But see, when you're sitting watching it to review it, it's amazing how many things you go, oh, wait a minute. Oh, no. I never remember that being that long. I remember this. Maybe it's the fact is sometimes when I've seen something, I know this bit's coming up, so I'll fast forward it. And that's a lot of bits that I've probably thought, I didn't like that part, I'll fast forward it and just forgot about it because I didn't want to remember it.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. There we are.
Yep. And with Sadako, we'll go for his last comment before we finish up. For all my issues with season 7, it had a lot of poignant moments. Yes, it did. With season 8, I can't think of a single one.
Agreed.
I think the only part I remember, and it was from the very first, and it was the plaster scene. It was the E11T. E11T, yeah. 11 is XI in Roman numerals. EXIT, exit. Or the cat. This definitely has to be virtual reality because
now we're in the virtual reality.
So that to me is one of the few, that and the brown alert are the only two things that stands out, because the brown alert is typical Red Dwarf.
That was well done. Yeah.
Yes, because that's the taking them. That's because they went. They says, we'll have to go from blue alert to red alert, which is a hark back to, are you sure, sir? It means changing the light bulb.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think we should go straight to brown alert. There's no such thing. Well, you'll not be thinking that in a minute. But so the brown alert and the E11T, believe it or not, see, anytime I was putting something when I used to code, even if it's something silly, like for instance an exit, I would always put an E11T code in it. And so if somebody wanted to quit something, they couldn't type exit, which was a standard DOS thing. So you had to put E11T. And I used that for such a long time because that joke to me was a smart joke, a Red Dwarf smart joke. So those two parts are the only poignant things I can think of season 8.
Yeah, which doesn't, it's considering what we're used to.
Yes, but it's usually we get spoiled by it.
Yeah, well, that's it. We had been pretty spoiled up until about season 6, and then things started getting a little bit like.
Yeah, after the two guys split, it did take a
little bit of the heart out of it. Yeah.
Yes, and unfortunately, for season 9 next week, it's going to be a struggle. I might actually just go out and shoot myself first. But
not that bad.
It's not that bad because when it comes down to it, there is a couple of red.
I remember seeing it, but it just doesn't. Nothing about it sticks in the memory like the early.
The only thing that sticks in my memory.
26.
Do you know the only thing that sticks in my memory from season 9?
Yeah.
The stupid wee car.
I can't even remember that, and I've watched
the Starbug, the wee green Starbug car, the wee mini. It wasn't even a Beetle or anything like that. It was one of those wee teeny micro car things, and it was up like Starbug, and that's what they drove around in. Because somebody, a fan, had actually customized their wee car because it was a wee teeny car. And he used to call it a bug, and he was a big Red Dwarf fan, so he customized it, and they rented it from him. Because they thought it was so cool. And if it was somebody's car driving up to a Comic-Con, everybody would be around it thinking
absolutely.
If that's the only thing you can remember, it's not good. Because yes, if that was somebody driving up in their wee car at a Comic-Con, everybody was saying, "Can I get a picture of it? Can I?" And everybody was doing it, even if it's that shape and size. But because that's in the TV show, and that's the only thing that people remember, it's not a good look.
No.
I've just had a look because we haven't got access to Beyond Series 8, but I've just done a quick web search, and there's a website called Daily Motion where episode 1 of Back to Earth is apparently. So,
well, there you go. Well, I've got the whole thing there. It's down there.
So I can remember seeing them on Dave when they were first. Remember we watched them, but I just can remember nothing about it at all. So
I've got the DVD there. So I'm working 8, 9, 10, 11, or 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Getting them all ready. And then when we hit 13, we'll get everybody that's been on and get them on. We'll all talk 13. Promised Land.
Excellent.
The most recent one. That's the way we should do it. So you're unavailable next week, but you'll be joining me on Saturday.
Yeah, you mentioned you were going to do the sort of just general geeky discussion of films and things like that.
Talk about films and TV. Just we'll go on, no movies to watch. Just we'll go on and we'll just talk about what we liked about
that
TV
sounds great.
In the past.
That sounds great. I think we were going to go for just because of some of our family commitments and things like that on a Saturday. We were going to go for a slightly later start.
Yes, 9 o'clock, because same idea. My mother and father-in-law's 50th anniversary, so
of course,
I'll be out on Saturday. So that's why the 9 o'clock slot was a lot better, because that way I can come in and actually relax before.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock will work quite nicely for Saturday.
Yes.
Yeah.
So everyone, join us at 9 o'clock Saturday for Geeky Talk. Or Let's Talk Geeky. I've not decided exactly what to call it, but Geeky Talk is probably the way it goes. And we're just going to talk whatever comes up, TV shows, movies, and we'll just discuss. So thank you very much for joining us tonight. Catology, Wend. Thank you.
Yeah.
And Darren, who?
You're welcome. Thanks for having us.
It's always a pleasure.
We really enjoy these.
Yes, definitely. And I'll see you Saturday, and I'll hopefully see you in a couple of weeks' time. If we can catch up, but I know it's no on BritBox. And don't worry, I'll be here next week and the week after.
Lovely.
Right.
Okay, guys.
We shall have a look. We will be there.
Definitely. Perfect. Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, remember, I'm not old. I'm classic. PG maybe out.